The Laughing Chai Walla, One Cup of Tea at a Time. Episode 1. The Journalist with the Curious Eyes. I have been selling chai at the small railway station in Thirupaloor for so many years now that time feels like a blur. My life is measured in cups of tea, not calendars. My name is Gopal, though most people here call me Gopal Anna, meaning older brother Gopal, or simply Chai Walla, which suits me just fine. I'm 68 years old, or so I believe. The actual date of my birth was never recorded anywhere. My mother used to say I came into this world at dawn on the day after Pongal, the harvest festival in Tamil Nadu. That is all I know for certain. I live just a stone's throw away, behind the rickety tin stalls and broken walls of the slum quarter. My tiny home, an asbestos-roofed shanty propped with wooden posts, stands at the edge of a row of similar dwellings, each with a personality of its own. Even though it's cramped and battered by monsoons, it is home. Everything I own, from my battered steel kettle to my old transistor radio, has lived under that roof as long as I have. Every morning, before the first train from Chennai pulls into the station, I roll out my wooden cart that's older than my son. If I had one, I have only daughters. I situate it on the platform, right next to the old banyan tree, whose roots have managed to crack through the station's concrete floor. I heat water in a large aluminum vessel over a portable kerosene stove, carefully measure out tea leaves, mix in crushed ginger and cardamom, and sweeten it with sugar or jaggery, depending on the customer's preference. I add creamy milk with quick, practiced motions that come from decades of repetition. When passengers disembark, rubbing sleep from their eyes or adjusting their heavy bags, they come to me like bees to a jasmine bloom. Gopal Anna, 2 cups, quick, they say, and I'm always delighted. My chai has become part of the station's identity. More than that, it is my identity. In this station, I have seen countless faces. A teacher traveling to the next town, a pilgrim heading to Ramaswaram, a soldier returning on leave, a fisherman from the coast, students in crisp uniforms, newly married couples with nervous excitement, and on, like watching an endless film reel. But one face in particular stands out these days, an unfamiliar foreign face that I spotted 2 mornings ago, sporting an eager smile and bright, curious eyes. It wasn't unusual to see a foreign tourist in Thirupaloor, especially if they were on their way to some temple or maybe doing a story about rural India. Yet this man had an air of sincerity, a mixture of curiosity and respect that made me take a second look. He was tall, with short hair and a khaki backpack slung over one shoulder. I was pouring chai for a group of traveling vendors when he approached my cart. Standing a respectful distance away, he looked at the cardamom pods in my hand with fascination. "Hello," he said, in a polite but tentative voice, carefully enunciating English as though I might not understand. "Could I have a cup of tea, please?" "Most certainly," I answered in English, though my accent might have been thick. I slid one of my well-worn clay cups in his direction. He seemed surprised that I spoke English. I guess it's not every day you find an old Indian man in a small-town railway station who can speak a little more than broken phrases. After taking a sip, his face lit up with delight. "This is marvelous," he exclaimed. "What's that flavor?" "Ginger and cardamom," I said, giving him my usual grin, which most folks here know me by. It's my own special blend. He inhaled the aroma deeply, almost as though memorizing it. "I'm Michael," he introduced himself, fiddling with the straps of his backpack. "Michael Hastings from Australia. I'm here working on a story." "It's a pleasure, Michael G," I said, using the respectful suffix. "Welcome to Thirupaloor." At that moment, I didn't know how much this Michael would come to mean to me, or that he would turn my station world, this life I had grown so comfortable with, into a tapestry of memories I'd never realized needed sharing. A late-night meeting. I didn't see him again until late that night, around 11, when the last train from Madurai was set to arrive. The platforms are always quieter at that hour, home mostly to the echoing footsteps of night shift staff, dozing travelers, or the occasional scurrying mouse. I have my lantern on, and I continue to serve chai to the few stragglers and railway cops who enjoy a hot beverage before turning in for the night. He arrived, hair a bit dishevelled, a small notepad tucked under his arm, and his camera around his neck. He approached my cart again, this time hesitating as if he thought I might have run out of tea. "Chai at this hour?" he asked, sounding both hopeful and uncertain. I let out a hearty laugh, the one people say is so infectious it echoes against the station's tiled walls. "My friend," I replied, "I sell chai at all hours. My home is just behind that broken wall you see over there. When the passengers need tea, I am here." I poured him a cup, steam curling upwards into the night sky. The station lights gave everything a slightly yellow hue. A few yards away, a dog rummaged around in an overturned bin for scraps. The wind carried a faint smell of diesel and overripe bananas from the fruit stall that had closed hours ago. Michael took a seat on the wooden bench near my cart. He savoured a slow sip, letting the warm liquid flow down his throat. "It's fascinating," he said after a moment, tapping his notepad absently. "Everyone here seems to know you. They greet you with such warmth. It's almost like you're some local celebrity." I couldn't help but grin. "Celebrity? I don't know about that. But perhaps friend. Yes." He chuckled. "You must have some stories, Gopal Anna." "Stories?" I repeated, lifting an eyebrow. "Oh, you mean about this station? The passengers?" "And about your life," he said, his eyes twinkling. "I'm a journalist, but I've always been drawn to personal stories more than big breaking news. I was told by someone in Chennai that if I wanted to understand real life here, I should skip the big cities, and so I found Thirupaloor." "Well, you've come to the right place," I said, scraping the bottom of my kettle. "Though you might be disappointed, my life is simple." He laughed softly. Sometimes simple can be far more profound. We chatted a bit about his travels across India, about the differences between Australia and Tamil Nadu. He told me about the dust storms back home and how he'd been traveling to different small towns to document everyday heroes, people who quietly hold communities together. He asked about my routine, about how long I'd been selling chai, about the nuances of tea itself. "You seem like a man at peace," he said, always smiling. "Why is that?" I paused for a second. The truth is, I've been asked that question before, though usually not by a foreigner. Sometimes people notice that I'm always in a good mood, always full of laughter. My face is lined with the kind of wrinkles that come from a lifetime of squinting under the hot sun and smiling in any weather. "My father used to tell me," I began, "the best way to cheat sadness is to laugh at it. If you can find just one small reason to smile each day, you're wealthier than the richest man in the country." Michael scribbled my words in his notepad as though they were precious gems. I felt both amused and a little shy. No one had ever jotted down my little life philosophies before. The invitation. In the days that followed, I saw Michael at random intervals. Sometimes he'd arrive around midday, wearing sunglasses and a wide-brimmed hat to shield himself from the fierce sun. Other times, he'd show up just as the evening train from Trichy was departing. He'd take photos of my cart, my hands pouring tea, the swirl of steaming liquid. He spoke to the station master, the porters, the fruit vendors, the beedi seller by the entrance. At first, I was a bit self-conscious. Being studied through a camera lens can be unsettling. But Michael never made me feel like an oddity. He treated me with genuine respect, and I responded in kind. One afternoon, as the scorching sun had driven most people to seek shade, Michael approached my cart again, panting from the heat. This time, he brought small plastic cups, since my clay cups were running low. I noticed he had a stack of them in his backpack. "I got these for you," he said. "I didn't want you to spend extra money on cups today." I was touched by the gesture. "That's very kind of you, but you must let me pay you back." He waved his hand dismissively. "No, consider it a gift. These only cost a few rupees." In the corner of the station, I saw the old newspaper vendor, Narayan, eyeing us curiously. He'd been around as long as I had, and he liked to poke fun at me sometimes. "Ah, Gopal Anna, you have a new best friend," Narayan shouted across the platform, laughter in his voice. "So, Michael, sir, are you going to write about how Gopal makes the best chai in all of Tamil Nadu?" Michael laughed good-naturedly. "I just might do that." Narayan cackled and gave me a wink. He was missing a tooth, so it looked rather comedic. It reminded me of how everyone here is woven into a communal fabric. None of us is truly alone. After serving a rush of midday passengers, I had a moment to rest. The next train was an hour away, and the station settled into a lull, punctuated only by the occasional bark of a dog or the squeak of a luggage cart. Michael lingered nearby, pen behind his ear, notepad open on his lap. He cleared his throat. "Gopal Anna, if you ever have time, I'd love to do a formal interview," he said. "Perhaps somewhere quieter, or even at your home, if that's acceptable." I folded my arms, thinking. My home is small, very small, and I live in the slum behind the station. But if you don't mind that, you're welcome. His face lit up. I'd be honored. And that's how I ended up inviting a foreign journalist into my humble abode. Entering my world. It was around 7 in the evening when we met by the station's entrance gate. Michael followed me, carefully stepping over potholes in the dirt road. We crossed a narrow footbridge that spanned an open drainage channel, its foul smell a testament to the city's neglected infrastructure. The cluster of tin-roofed homes soon surrounded us, small cooking fires flickering at their thresholds. The smell of onions frying in oil and pungent masala drifted in the warm air. Barefoot children ran through the lanes, chasing each other with shrieks of delight. My home was the fifth in a row of what some would call shacks, but we who live here call them houses. It had corrugated metal and salvaged wooden planks for walls, with a sheet of asbestos roofing overhead. I pushed aside a cloth that served as a makeshift door. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. "Watch your head. It's low." Michael ducked, entering my world. A single kerosene lamp provided dim light inside. On the left side, a raised platform covered by a thin woven mat served as my bed. In the corner, an old trunk containing my clothes, a few books, and old photo albums. A small wooden stand held my battered utensils and a single-burner stove. "It's cozy," Michael commented, kneeling slightly to avoid bumping his head. He didn't sound patronizing. Rather, he was making an honest observation. I busied myself lighting a small stove. I keep a kettle here for my personal chai. Even though I sell chai all day, I still enjoy making a fresh pot at home. "Sit, sit." I gestured to my bed, the only place one can sit in here besides the floor. "You have so little," Michael observed quietly, taking in the cramped interior. "And yet you're always smiling." I shrugged. "We do the best we can. Besides, happiness is not in the walls or the roof. It's in the heart, no?" He nodded, scribbling this down in his notepad. "That's beautiful. Do you live alone?" "Yes," I answered. "My wife passed away many years ago, and my daughters are both married, living in cities far from here. They come visit when they can, but life is busy, you know." Michael listened intently, a thoughtful look on his face. "I'm very sorry to hear about your wife," he said softly. "May I ask how it happened?" I paused, stirring the chai. The memory still stings, even though I try to keep the grief locked away. "She died of an illness," I said, measuring each word carefully. "In those days, we didn't have the money for better doctors. We tried the government hospital, but it was too late." He looked down, perhaps realizing he had touched on a sensitive topic. "That must have been very hard." "It was," I agreed. Then, taking a deep breath, I shook off the sadness like a dog shakes off water. "But the station and these people, they helped me heal. Serving chai, chatting with strangers, hearing their own stories. It gave me a purpose." Michael let the silence fill the room for a few beats, respecting the gravity of the moment. Then he said, "If it's all right with you, Gopal Anna, I'd like to write a piece about your life. I think you have a story that needs telling." I cocked my head, surprised. "Me? But I've done nothing extraordinary." He smiled. "That's precisely why it's extraordinary. You represent millions of people in this country who live humble, honest lives and radiate warmth in ways that are rarely celebrated." A wave of emotion swept through me. No one had ever phrased it quite like that before. "If you think it will help your readers understand my world, then I am happy to share." And that's how our arrangement began. We decided that over the next few days, or however long Michael's assignment kept him in Thirupaloor, he would spend a couple of hours with me each day, listening to my stories and experiences. Then he'd compile them into an article or a series of articles. The first recording. Michael pulled out a small audio recorder from his backpack. "May I record our conversation?" he asked. I nodded. "I'm an old man, but I don't mind new technology," I said with a laugh. "Record away." He set it on a small stool and pressed a button. A tiny red light glowed, capturing every word. "So, Gopal Anna," he began, "can you tell me how you first started selling chai at the station?" I leaned back, crossing my legs on the bed. Memories rushed back like a tidal wave. I recalled the day I stood on the same platform, trembling with nerves, offering my first cups of tea. I was only a boy, about 14 or 15. My father had died suddenly. Heart failure, the local doctor said. I was the only son, and my mother was in no condition to support us. So I left school and began looking for any work that would put rice on our plates. "There was an old tea seller before me," I explained. "His name was Rahim Pai. He was getting on in age and needed someone to help him run his cart. I started carrying boiling water from his house to the station, then washing cups, wiping the cart. Over time, I learned the art of blending tea. When he retired, he passed the cart on to me." Michael nodded, clearly fascinated. "So you learned everything from him?" "He taught me the basics," I said, "but everyone develops their own touch. For me, it's the pinch of crushed ginger and a bit of cardamom that sets it apart, and the right proportion of milk to water. That's the secret." He laughed. "I'll keep that in mind. Speaking of which, is the tea ready?" I jumped up, realizing I'd let the chai simmer. "Yes, yes. Let me pour it." We sipped our cups. The sweet and spicy aroma filled the tiny space, and I felt an odd sense of contentment. Here was this foreign journalist, sitting cross-legged in my humble shack, listening to my life story like it was the most important tale in the world. An unexpected comfort. I wasn't used to talking about my past in such detail. Usually, when I meet strangers at the station, we talk about current affairs, the weather, cricket, or the price of vegetables. Rarely do I open up about where I came from, what tragedies shaped me, or how I found my laughter again. But with Michael, something felt right. He had a gentle way of asking questions, never probing too forcefully, never judging. After we finished our chai, I escorted him back to the station. By then, the stars were out, twinkling above the platform lights. A few late-night travelers huddled on a bench, waiting for the midnight express. The air was cooling down, a welcome respite from the sweltering day. Michael turned to me. "Thank you, Gopal Anna," he said, placing a hand over his heart. "This is more than I could have hoped for. May I come by again tomorrow?" I gave him my widest grin, the one people say is so infectious. "Of course. I will be here, as always, with my chai." He laughed. "I'll bring the cups." And with that, he sauntered off toward the small lodge he was staying in. I watched him disappear around the bend of the road. The station fell quiet, save for the chirping of crickets and the distant rumble of an approaching freight train. Night reflections. When I finally returned to my shack that night, I found it difficult to sleep. My mind buzzed with old memories, as though an invisible hand had yanked open a trunk of forgotten photographs. I thought of my father's sudden death. I remembered how my mother cried inconsolably for weeks, how I held her frail hands and promised to care for her. I recalled my first day at the station, the overwhelming sense of diesel fumes and the stench from the public toilets, the wheels of trains clacking on the tracks, the swirl of tea leaves in a pot, the first coins dropping into my trembling palm as I handed over a hot cup to a hungry passenger. I also thought about the many people I'd encountered over the decades. A wandering holy man who swore he had mystical powers, a dancer from a travelling folk theatre group, an author who penned romance novels in Tamil, and a man who once claimed to have come from the moon. I wondered which of these stories Michael would want to hear and how I might piece them together to make sense of it all. It struck me then that maybe my life wasn't just a monotonous routine after all. Maybe, in some small way, I was the keeper of 1,000 stories, gleaned from strangers on their journeys. I had my own story too, humble but forged by love, loss, and resilience. Somewhere in the distance, I heard the whistle of the midnight express. I pictured the train rushing past, carrying its cargo of souls, each with their own dreams and destinies. And then there was me, the old Chai Walla, rooted at that station like the banyan tree, providing warmth in a small clay cup to whoever needed it. I closed my eyes, letting the night's hush enfold me. Tomorrow, Michael would come again, and I felt a curious blend of nerves and excitement. Perhaps it was time to share not just the tea, but the stories steeped in my heart. Just before sleep finally claimed me, I remembered something my father used to say. Every cup of chai is a new beginning. No matter how many cups you've sold, treat each one like it's your first. I smiled in the darkness, comforted by the thought. There would be more chai in the morning, more stories to tell. And so, my journey with Michael, the curious journalist from Australia, had truly begun. The Laughing Chai Walla, One Cup of Tea at a Time. Episode 2. Memories of Childhood and the First Lessons. I woke at dawn the day after Michael first came to my home, my mind churning with thoughts and recollections. My usual morning routine felt a little different, like something inside me had been awakened. After so many years of going about my tasks with the same predictable rhythm, rolling out my cart, lighting the stove, boiling the water, waiting for the early train, I now carried with me the awareness that someone cared to listen to the stories of my life. I arrived at the station just as the sky was transitioning from a pale grey to a gentle pink. The old banyan tree's silhouette stood out in the early light, its twisted branches like ancient arms reaching out to greet the day. A cool breeze, still tinged with the dampness of night, teased the ends of my hair. The first train from Chennai rolled in around 6 a.m., squealing to a stop with a trail of white exhaust. A small crowd emerged, still rubbing sleep from their eyes. The usual routine ensued, people dragging suitcases, children yawning, porters whistling for attention. I greeted them with my customary smile, offering steaming cups of chai. Among the early passengers, I noticed Michael walking briskly, taking photos of the train and the surrounding platform. He paused when he spotted me, waving enthusiastically. "Good morning, Gopal Anna," he called, weaving through the passengers until he reached my cart. "Vanakkam, Michael G," I replied, using the Tamil greeting for the morning. "You're up early?" He smiled, rubbing at his tired eyes. I wanted to catch that morning arrival. Plus, I couldn't resist a fresh cup of your tea. I gave a small chuckle, pouring him a cup from my large kettle. "Careful, it's very hot." He blew softly on the surface of the chai and took a cautious sip. Perfect," he said. "Shall we meet again this afternoon for more of your story?" I nodded. "Of course. Come around lunchtime. There's usually a lull then." He agreed and wandered off to interview a few travellers, scribbling in his notepad or snapping photos of local faces. I resumed my work, feeling a fresh spring in my step. It seemed everyone felt my good mood. A few regulars asked why I was grinning more broadly than usual, and I just shrugged. "What's different today, Anna?" "Oh, just the morning sun," I'd say. "But you look like a man who won a lottery." "In a way, I have." They laughed, not fully understanding my meaning, but that was all right. I had the distinct feeling that something special was unfolding, even if it was just in the form of shared memories. A passage of time and a bowl of pani puri. Around noon, after the wave of morning trains thinned out, the station returned to its typical midday lull. The fruit vendor, Lakshmi, dozed off under an umbrella, while the coconut seller, Velu, lazily sipped his own coconut water. The small snack stall next to the station was open, selling vadas, pakoras, and pani puri. I decided to treat myself to a quick snack and stepped away from my cart, leaving it in the watchful eyes of the newspaper vendor, Narayan, who was reading the day's headlines. Michael appeared right on time, the camera around his neck, his backpack half open and crammed with notes. When he saw me near the snack stall, he waved. "Anna, I was looking for you." I motioned him over. "Come, come. Let's have some pani puri before we talk. You must try it. The vendor here is quite good." Michael grinned, ever the adventurous eater. "Absolutely. I've had pani puri once in Delhi, but I hear it's different in the south." So we stood by the makeshift table, the pani puri vendor deftly assembling the crisp shells, filling them with mashed potato, onions, and spicy sweet water. Michael's face lit up as he tasted one, watery filling dribbling down his chin. "That's tangy," he exclaimed, wiping his mouth. "And spicy. I love it." I laughed, finishing my own. Yes, quite different from chai, but a welcome treat. We found a shady spot under the station awning near the banyan tree. There, away from most of the noise, we settled onto a pair of old, wobbly stools. Michael took out his audio recorder and notepad, giving me an expectant look. "I'd love to hear more about your childhood," he began. "You said you started working after your father died, but what was it like before that? Do you have any early memories of family or friends?" I rubbed a hand across my chin, feeling the stubble there. Sometimes it's funny how memory works, how certain images come vividly to mind even after decades. "Well," I said, leaning back, "I remember a small village, the smell of freshly turned earth when the rains came. My father was a farmer's helper in those days, working on someone else's land. I remember chasing after goats in the fields. My mother would scold me if I wandered too far." Michael listened intently, occasionally taking notes. The hustle and bustle of the station felt far away, replaced by the echoes of my childhood. The village life. I continued. We lived in a thatched hut made of dried coconut fronds. In the monsoon, water leaked through the roof, and my mother would arrange pots to catch the dripping rain. She used to say the pots made music, tap, 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 sometimes lulling her to sleep. Michael smiled at the image. "Sounds almost poetic." "For me, it was just life," I said with a shrug. "We were poor, of course, but so was everyone around us. I didn't realize how little we had until I was older. As a boy, I took joy in simple things. Playing marbles in the dusty courtyard, climbing trees to pick tamarind pods, running barefoot until my soles hardened. I paused, feeling a warmth in my chest at the recollection. Now, you see these new plastic slippers I have? I pointed down at my feet. They're a luxury compared to going barefoot all the time. But back then, we didn't fret about it. The earth was our playground. Michael nodded, his pen scratching across the notepad. And your parents? He prompted gently. What were they like before your father passed? At that, I closed my eyes momentarily, letting an image of my father surface. He was a tall man, taller than most in the village, with a stern face that lit up only when he laughed, and my mother, a petite woman, always cooking something aromatic over a wood fire. They loved each other deeply, I said. Even though times were tough, I never saw them fight except about small things, like if father forgot to fetch water from the well or if mother burned the rice. I remember once my mother jokingly threatened to throw a ladle at him, and he pretended to duck, making me laugh so hard I almost choked on my food. Michael chuckled. That sounds delightful. So, you had a happy childhood, in essence? I suppose I did, I answered, smiling. Happy, but short-lived, because when I was around 10 or 11, there was a terrible drought. Crops failed, and people in our village started migrating to the towns in search of work. My father came to Thirupaloor because he heard there was some construction happening near the station. He found a job carrying bricks and mixing cement. Eventually, he brought us here too. Is that how you ended up near the railway station? I nodded. Exactly. We settled in a small shanty in the slum behind the station. It was better than starving in the village, but not by much. At least here, we had the promise of daily wages. Michael jotted down a flurry of notes. So that's the beginning of your connection to this station? Yes, I said. I was just a boy, and these train tracks were new and exciting to me. I'd watch the locomotives roar past, the wheels clattering. I'd see the people leaning out the windows, rich, poor, from different states, some foreigners. It was like glimpsing different worlds all at once. The first chai, the first lesson. I paused, remembering the day my father bought me my first cup of chai from a tea seller on the platform, long before I became one myself. The memory came rushing back with surprising clarity. My father was finishing a day's work at the construction site, I recalled. He had earned a few extra rupees that day. As a treat, he took me by the hand and led me to the tea stall. I'd never had tea in my life. Milk was expensive, and sugar even more so. I could almost taste it even now. The warmth, the sweetness, the spicy undertone of ginger. I remember that first sip burned my tongue, I said, chuckling softly, but it also tasted like celebration. My father watched me with a grin, probably proud to give me such a luxury. Michael listened with rapt attention. It must have felt very special. It did, I said quietly. That was the first lesson I remember about chai. It can turn an ordinary moment into something memorable, a small luxury that makes life feel a bit sweeter. He lifted his own cup of chai, he had set one down while listening, and took a long sip, as if trying to merge my memory with his own experience. A swift turn of fate. I cleared my throat, the mood shifting. Of course, life changed drastically when my father died. He had a sudden heart problem. No warnings, no real signs. He just collapsed one day after work. I was maybe 14 or 15 at the time. Michael's eyes flickered with sympathy. That's so young. I nodded. Yes, we had no savings, no property. My mother's health was fragile. So I dropped out of school to find work. Education was a luxury I could no longer afford. He made a few quick notes, then asked, was it difficult to leave school? I laughed, but there was little mirth in it. Difficult? Yes, in many ways. But when survival is at stake, you don't question whether something is difficult or not. You just do what needs to be done. I leaned forward, my elbows on my knees. That's when I met Rahim Bhai, the old tea seller. He saw me wandering aimlessly by the station, asked me what I was doing. When I told him I was looking for any odd job, He took me under his wing. At first, he paid me just a few annas for carrying water, washing cups, but at least I had some money to buy rice for my mother and me. Michael's pen paused over the notepad. Rahim, how did he teach you the art of tea? A gentle smile tugged at my lips. He didn't just teach me how to brew tea. He taught me how to treat people. He said, Gopal, a good tea seller doesn't just hand over a cup. He offers comfort, a moment of respite, a conversation, sometimes even hope. Michael's eyebrows lifted. That's profound. Yes, I said, nodding. He was a wise man. He believed that tea was a metaphor for life. You steep in hot water, and that's when your true flavor comes out. Michael chuckled. He sounds like a philosopher in disguise. Perhaps he was, I agreed. He was the first to show me that the station wasn't just a place of transit. It was a crossroads of stories, a community of travelers. He taught me to always greet people with a smile, to ask how their journey was, to remember their preferences if they came often. The personal touch, you see? Michael tapped his notepad. And you've carried that forward for decades. I inclined my head in acknowledgement. Yes, and it has served me well. I may not be rich in money, but I am rich in goodwill, my friend. That's something you can't buy or sell. Revisiting the cart. The muffled announcements over the station loudspeaker reminded me that a train was due in 15 minutes. A small crowd was already gathering on the platform. Office workers returning from a half-day shift, a few students with backpacks, some families carrying bulging cloth bags. Shall we move back to your cart? Michael asked, tucking away his recorder. I nodded and stood up, brushing dust off my pants. Yes, duty calls. We can continue our talk tonight if you like. Or tomorrow. Tonight is great, Michael said. I want to get as much as possible while I'm here. We made our way back. I fired up the small kerosene stove, set the large aluminum pot of water to boil, and readied the tea leaves, ginger, cardamom. Michael watched quietly, snapping a few photos. A wave of passengers descended on us like a tide, each placing their orders with varying degrees of urgency. 1 cup, extra sugar. Gopal Anna, 2 cups, light milk. Sir, quick! The train is about to leave. I danced through my well-practiced routine, ladling hot chai, frothing it by pouring the liquid from one vessel to another in mid-air, all while greeting people with my usual, Vanakkam, sister, sir, friend, here's your chai. Michael captured the flurry on camera, occasionally helping me by handing out cups and collecting change. The station bustled with life. The train rumbled in, stood for a few minutes while people boarded, then rumbled out, leaving behind a swirl of dust and diesel fumes. As the crowd thinned, I wiped my brow and looked at Michael. You see how it is, I said, half out of breath. In the rush, everything becomes a whirlwind of activity. He grinned, an exhilarated look on his face. It's fascinating. Everyone relies on you, not just for tea, but for a moment of comfort. I nodded. Exactly what Rahim Bai taught me. Evening reminisces and a stroll. Nightfall found us once again sitting on the wooden bench near my cart. By then, the station quieted down significantly, with only a few stragglers and the occasional freight train passing through. The overhead lights buzzed with electricity, drawing moths into their luminous orbit. Michael turned on his recorder again, the red light winking in the dimness. Shall we continue, Anna? I gave a relaxed nod. Of course. What do you want to know? He flipped through his notes. You mentioned your mother. What happened to her? A pang of sorrow crossed my heart. She passed away not long after I started working with Rahim Bai. She had been weak for years, and the struggle of losing my father probably hastened her decline. One morning, I came home to find she had drifted away in her sleep as gently as a candle snuffed out by the wind. Michael's expression grew somber. I'm very sorry. Thank you, I said softly. It was a dark time. I was left alone, without any immediate family. But Rahim Bai and his wife took me in. They didn't have much, but they shared what they had. I owe them my life, really. Michael leaned in. That's beautiful, that they took you under their wing like that. I nodded. In India, especially in villages and small towns, the community often becomes your extended family. We might lack material wealth, but we share our burdens. That's how we survive. A brief silence passed between us, underscored by the chirping of cicadas. Then Michael said, "So, you worked with Rahim. How did you finally get your own cart?" I smiled at the memory. It was on my 20th birthday, or close enough to it. Rahim decided he and his wife wanted to retire to their native village. His children lived there, and he wished to spend his final years with them. He handed me the cart, battered and old, saying, "Gopal, I trust you to continue. Just promise me one thing. Keep serving chai with a kind heart." Sounds like a weighty responsibility. Yes, but I was thrilled. Over time, I made a few improvements, replaced some wheels, painted the sides. Then I started to experiment with flavors: ginger, cardamom, sometimes a bit of masala. Passengers liked it, and soon I was earning enough to sustain myself. Michael clicked off his recorder for a moment, leaning back. That's an incredible journey. From a boy who tasted his first chai on this very platform to becoming the station's beloved Chai Walla. I chuckled. Life can be poetic in that way. We spent the next hour strolling along the mostly empty platform. Michael took photos of the station sign, Thirupaloor, in Tamil and English, and the flickering neon lights above the ticket counter. He wanted to capture the essence of the place at night, how shadows fell on chipped benches and old posters peeled from walls. I pointed out spots that held significance to me. The corner where I used to sit with Rahim Bai, counting coins at the end of the day. The bench where I napped if business was slow. The broken weighing scale that used to work when I was a teenager, but had long since rusted. He listened to each anecdote, sometimes laughing, sometimes turning thoughtful. Laughter and irony. At one point, we came across the station master's office. The station master, a portly man named Subramani, was dozing at his desk, lulled by the quiet. I gently knocked on the open door. "Subramani, sir." He stirred, nearly tipping his chair over. "Eh?" "Ah, Gopal Anna," he said, straightening his uniform cap. "You startled me." Michael suppressed a smile, while I kept my face diplomatically straight. "Apologies, sir. Just showing Michael G around." Subramani blinked at Michael. "Oh, the Australian journalist. Yes, I've heard about you. So you're writing about our Gopal Anna, is that correct?" Michael nodded enthusiastically. "He's quite the story." Subramani grunted in agreement. "That he is. You know, he's been here longer than me, knows more about the station's comings and goings than even the official records. If you want real information about Thirupaloor, you should ask him." Michael laughed. "I'm beginning to see that." Subramani yawned, pulling out a ledger. "Well, I'm just doing the night shift. You folks carry on." We left him to his dozing, stepping back onto the empty platform. I couldn't help but chuckle. He's not a bad fellow, but sometimes he likes to remind me that he's in charge. "Gopal, you must not leave your cart in the wrong place," or "Gopal, no open fires on the platform." But we get along. Michael shook his head in amusement. It's funny how a place can have its own ecosystem, with each person playing a role. "That's exactly right," I replied. "We have the station master, the porters, the vendors, the passengers, the occasional policeman or ticket collector. Each is a thread in a tapestry. Over the years, I've come to know them all. Some are grumpy, some are kind, but everyone's necessary." Reflections. Under a flickering light. As midnight approached, we found ourselves near an old lamp-post that flickered in and out, casting a ghostly glow around our feet. The dog that roamed the station at night, whom I called Raja, trotted over and wagged its tail at me. I patted its head. Michael watched, smiling. You even have a dog friend? I shrugged. He's not mine alone, but I slip him a biscuit now and then. He's part of the station too. Michael took one final photo, capturing the dog, the lamppost, and me in the background. Then he looked at me, serious all of a sudden. Gopal, Anna, thank you for sharing all this. I feel like I'm just scratching the surface of your life. There's so much more. Your marriage, children. I want to hear it all. But not tonight, I suppose. I nodded, stifling a yawn. Tomorrow, then. I need some rest, and you probably do too. The station will always be here, and so will I. We said our goodbyes, and Michael headed off to his lodge, footsteps echoing against the station walls. I locked up my chai cart for the night, carefully placing the empty kettle and cups inside. I gave Raja a little pat, whispered, "See you tomorrow, friend," and made my way back to my tiny home behind the station. Inside, I lit a small lamp, the flame dancing shadows on the corrugated walls. I settled onto my thin mattress with a sigh. A wave of exhaustion mingled with a sense of fulfillment. It was strange. Talking so much about one's own past can be draining, but it can also be liberating. For years, I'd kept most of these memories tucked away, letting them fade like old newspapers left in the sun. Now, under Michael's gentle prompting, they were unfolding in vivid color, stories that demanded to be told and cherished. My last thought before drifting off was of my father, mother, and the dusty village of my early youth. It felt like I was that barefoot boy again, tasting his first cup of chai, brimming with hope for whatever tomorrow might bring. A note on the late night. I half dreamed of trains whistling through starry nights, carrying secrets and sorrows, joys and heartbreak. In my dream, I was pouring tea for all kinds of people, kings and beggars, dancers and priests, soldiers and children. And each time I handed them a cup, they smiled at me, grateful. When I awoke, the dream clung to me like morning dew, a gentle reminder that in some small way, my role in this world might be more than just selling tea. Perhaps, as Michael suggested, it was about bridging the distance between strangers, one warm cup at a time. Looking ahead. And so ended that day. But many more were to follow, each unveiling another layer of my story. Michael would keep asking questions, and I would keep answering, each memory bubbling to the surface like the froth on a fresh cup of chai. We hadn't yet touched upon my marriage, my daughters, or the challenges that shaped me into the man I am today. Those stories, full of humor, irony, heartbreak, and wisdom, were waiting in the wings, ready to be told. Little did I know that by the end of this journey, there would be a twist so unexpected it would leave even me, an old tea seller who thought he had seen it all, completely surprised. But that is the nature of life, isn't it? Like a train that keeps rolling down the tracks, you never know for sure what station lies ahead or what story each passenger carries. All you can do is keep the tea hot, your heart open, and your smile ready to greet the next traveler. Episode 3. Young Love, Family Ties, and the wedding that changed my life. I woke the next morning to the sound of a lone rooster crowing somewhere in the slum. The sky had only begun to lighten, the indigo of night giving way to a pale lavender. My body ached a little from another late night at the station, but my spirits were high. After all, Michael was due to come by again. I rolled up my thin bedding, tucked it neatly into a corner, and unlatched the door of my small shack. The humid air greeted me, tinged with the smell of rotting garbage from the nearby open drain, but also carrying a whiff of frying dosa batter from a neighbor's home. Such is life here, beauty and discomfort coexisting side by side. Before heading to the station, I stopped at the communal water tap, hoping to fill a plastic bucket. The line was already forming, women in saris, balancing brass pots on their hips, chatting in hushed tones. I waited my turn, nodding greetings to a few familiar faces. A small boy, barefoot and wide-eyed, carried two empty containers. I helped him lift one when it was our turn at the tap. Small acts of kindness. That's how we manage, day by day. After a quick splash of water on my face and a change into a clean, albeit faded, shirt, I wheeled my chai cart to the station platform. The sun was still shy, peeking over the horizon, painting the sky in mild oranges and pinks. I set up my cart in my usual spot beneath the banyan tree, fired up the kerosene stove, and began the comforting ritual of boiling water and measuring tea leaves. Morning customers and an early arrival. The first round of customers arrived with the daily passenger train from Chennai. Office workers with pressed shirts stepped out, rummaging for small change as they headed straight toward me. A group of college students hopped off next, animatedly discussing exams, hair still damp from a quick shower. I smiled and served them my best brew, ginger cardamom with a dash of milk and sugar. They slurped it down, sighing contentedly, as if this chai were their best defense against the trials of the day. Michael arrived soon after, wearing the same khaki backpack and an eager smile. Even at this hour, he looked ready for an adventure. He greeted me with a small wave. "Good morning, Gopal Anna." I handed him a cup of steaming chai. "Vanakkam, Michael G. You're early again." He grinned, taking a careful sip. I wanted to catch the atmosphere before the station gets too crowded. Thought I might get some photos of the sunrise and the locals on their daily commute. I nodded. "Smart idea. The light is beautiful at this time." He savored the chai. As good as ever. You mentioned last night that we'd speak about your wife and children today. Is now a good time, or should we wait until it's less busy?" I glanced at the thinning crowd. The biggest morning rush had already cleared, and the next train wouldn't arrive for nearly an hour. I shrugged. "Now is good, if you don't mind the occasional interruption from thirsty travelers." He laughed. "Not at all. I'll just grab a few quotes and we can pause whenever you need to serve." A quiet corner and the first spark. We moved to the edge of the platform, near the large banyan tree that had watched over me for decades. The broad trunk offered partial shade, and the morning sun filtered through the leaves in dappled patterns on the concrete. Michael pulled out his notepad and recorder, setting them on a small ledge. "So, Anna," he said softly, "tell me how you met your wife." I felt a mixture of warmth and nostalgia rise within me. It had been a while since I'd recounted those days. "Her name was Lakshmi," I began, my eyes drifting to the passing tracks. "She lived in a small village about 15 kilometers from here. I met her by chance. She came to visit a cousin who lived in the slum near the station. I still remember the first time I saw her." Michael leaned forward, pen at the ready. "Go on." "It was an afternoon," I said, "and I was selling tea as usual. The sun was blazing overhead. Business was slow, so I was leaning against my cart, half dozing. Then I saw this young woman in a simple blue sari standing with her cousin. She was waiting for a train to take her back to her village. The cousin came up to my cart to buy chai, and Lakshmi followed, curious. When she smiled, I felt something shift in my chest, like a click that told me, 'Oh, there you are.' That's the person meant for me. Michael smiled. Love at first sight? I chuckled. Perhaps. At least an attraction at first sight. But I was shy, so I just poured the chai and kept my head down. Yet I couldn't resist sneaking a few glances. How did she react? I shrugged, laughing softly at the memory. She was polite, said the chai was good, thanked me, but there was a little amusement in her eyes, as if she sensed my nerves. Just then, a passing vendor ambled over, requesting a cup of tea. I paused to serve him quickly, then returned to Michael. So that was the first spark, I continued. She came again a few times over the next couple of months to visit her cousin. Each time she'd pass by my cart. We'd exchange a few words. Small talk about the weather, about the station, about the dusty roads. But beneath that, I felt we both knew something deeper was unfolding. Michael jotted down notes. That's quite sweet. Did you ask her to marry you right away? I laughed, the sound echoing off the banyan's branches. Oh, no, no. This is India, my friend, especially back then. We had many traditions and social hurdles. My pride didn't let me believe she could be interested in a simple chai seller. Also, I had no family to make a formal approach. My parents were gone, and I was living on my own. Michael's brow furrowed in concern. That must have been a challenge. So what happened next? Family ties and negotiations. I sighed, recalling the complexities. Lakshmi's cousin noticed our mutual affection. She asked me one day, "Do you like my cousin?" I could barely speak, but I finally nodded. She told me that Lakshmi also liked me, but there was the matter of her parents. They wanted her to marry someone from their village, ideally with a small bit of land. And who was I? A nobody with a tea cart. Michael's eyes reflected empathy. That sounds daunting. Yes, I said. Yet Lakshmi was determined. She convinced her cousin to speak to her parents on our behalf. I also went along, trembling like a leaf, mind you, to meet them. Michael chuckled. How did that meeting go? I served a passenger who was rushing to catch a departing train, handing him a scalding cup of tea and taking his coins before turning back to Michael. Well, I said, wiping my hands on a rag. It was tense. Her father was a stern man, a farmer. Her mother kept glancing at me, measuring me from head to toe. I was sweaty from the journey. It was the peak of summer. But I managed to speak from my heart. I told them I had steady income, that I was responsible and had no vices. And I told them I'd do everything I could to make their daughter happy. Michael's voice softened. That must have been quite a risk. It was, I admitted. At the time, I didn't know if they'd laugh me out of the house or show me the door. But to my surprise, her father said, "At least you're honest. Let me think about it." Later, I learned Lakshmi had been very persuasive in private, telling them that she didn't mind if I was poor, as long as I was kind. A wedding under the scorching sun. Eventually, Lakshmi's parents gave in, though not without conditions. They insisted on a small ceremony in their village temple, meaning I had to gather enough money to pay for the wedding sari, some jewelry, even if minimal, and the feast for guests. I saved every rupee I could, I said. I worked extra hours, took on any side jobs, cleaning the station's waiting room, helping porters carry luggage for a small tip. My neighbors in the slum donated plates and utensils for the feast. Even the station master at the time gave me a bit of money, saying, "A wedding is a joyous occasion. Don't be shy to ask for help." Michael looked touched. The community really came together. They did, I confirmed. In small towns, when people see you as part of the fabric, they rally around you. So after a few months of preparation, the big day arrived. I leaned on my cart, a distant smile tugging at my lips. It was a scorching day, the sun beating down on the dry fields, but Lakshmi looked radiant in her red silk sari. Her cousin had done her hair with jasmine flowers, and her eyes sparkled. The temple was modest, a small shrine with stone pillars and a priest who knew half the village. We exchanged garlands. Mine made from marigolds, hers from roses. Michael's pen was busy on the notepad. Did you have a lot of guests? By big city standards, no, but for us, it felt huge, maybe 70 or 80 people, mostly from her side of the family and a few folks from the station, the fruit seller, the newspaper vendor, the porter. They all crammed into a small open courtyard, sweating in the heat but smiling at the spectacle. The priest chanted the mantras, we circled the sacred fire, and that was that. We were husband and wife. He paused, letting the moment sink in. It must have felt surreal. In a way, yes, I replied. I never imagined I'd find a partner in this life, especially after losing my parents so young. Yet there we were, starting a new chapter under the watchful eyes of old village gods. Returning to the station as a married man. After serving another small group of customers, a family with 2 squirming children, I returned to our conversation. When we came back to Thirupaloor, we set up our home where I live now. It was even more modest back then, just a tiny corrugated tin shack with hardly any space. But Lakshmi lit it with her warmth. She kept it clean, always had some fresh flowers in a small tin vase. She'd cook simple meals, but they tasted like feasts to me. Michael smiled. She sounds wonderful. She was, I said, feeling a pang of sadness that she was no longer around. And she adapted to station life so easily. She'd sometimes help me wash cups, or she'd bring me lunch at the cart. Passengers got used to seeing her too. Some even teased us for being newlyweds, asking us to brew them wedding chai. Extra sweet, of course. He chuckled. I love how the station people seem so involved in each other's lives. That's the nature of a small station, I said. We see each other every day. We hear each other's joys and sorrows. It's like a big family with the trains as our clock. Trials and joys of early marriage. Michael checked his recorder. Would you mind sharing some of the challenges you faced in those early months or years? I took a moment to gather my thoughts. Money was always tight. We didn't have any savings to speak of, and the income from the chai cart varied with the seasons. Monsoon times were especially hard. People stayed away from the station unless absolutely necessary, so sales dropped. Our roof leaked. We argued sometimes, mostly about finances and the stress of it all. Michael's pen hovered. So how did you cope? I cracked a small grin. Whenever we were on the verge of a fight, Lakshmi would just hold my hand and say, "Remember why we got married in the first place?" And just like that, the tension would melt. Or I'd crack a joke, and she'd start laughing, scolding me for not taking things seriously. But I was serious, in my own way. I believed that laughter could carry us through the toughest times, the way a small lamp can chase away the darkness. He nodded thoughtfully. That's a beautiful philosophy. I learned it from Rahim Bai, in part, I continued, and also from my father's old saying, if you can laugh in the face of adversity, you've already won half the battle. It doesn't solve your problems, but it gives you the spirit to tackle them. The birth of my daughters. Michael flipped to a fresh page in his notepad. When did your children come into the picture? I beamed, recalling the day I first heard I was going to be a father. Our first daughter, Valley, was born about 2 years after our marriage. Oh, how nervous I was when Lakshmi went into labor. We couldn't afford a private hospital, so we went to the government one in town. The paint was peeling off the walls, the beds were few. Lakshmi endured so much pain, but when we finally heard that first cry, all the worry vanished. Holding that little bundle in my arms, I felt an indescribable joy and terror at the same time, knowing I was responsible for her future. Michael listened intently, eyes focused. And the second daughter? Radha came 3 years later, I said. She was even more of a surprise, a smaller baby, but with a loud wail. Suddenly, we were 4 in that tiny shack, but Lakshmi managed everything so gracefully. She'd cradle Radha in one arm, stir a pot of sambar with the other, and still find time to make sure Valley was dressed for school. Michael laughed softly. She must have been a formidable multitasker. She was unstoppable, I affirmed, my voice soft with admiration. We couldn't afford a babysitter, so sometimes she brought the girls to the station when they were toddlers. They'd toddle around near my cart, playing with empty cups, giggling whenever a train thundered past. The regular travellers adored them, would offer sweets or little toys. Lessons in love and laughter. I paused to serve another flurry of passengers, mostly day labourers returning from a shift. As the train rattled away, I glanced at Michael, who seemed lost in thought. "Your story is remarkable, Anna," he finally said. "You and Lakshmi built a life out of so little, yet you speak of it as if it was abundant." I shrugged, smiling. Because it was abundant, in love, in laughter, in small joys. Sometimes we measure wealth only in money. But what about the happiness that comes from a kind word, a shared meal, or the sight of your child learning to walk? That's a wealth that can't be counted in rupees. Michael scribbled something quickly in his notepad, then set it down. That's exactly what I want to capture in my article. The richness of everyday life, especially in places people overlook. A bit of humour and irony. Just then, the station master, Subramani, came strolling by, adjusting his belt over a protruding belly. He eyed the recorder, then eyed me. "Gopal, Anna, are you going to be on TV soon?" Michael grinned. "We're just recording his life story for an article, sir." Subramani harumphed. "Make sure you mention the punctuality of our trains," he joked sarcastically, glancing at the station clock that was perpetually 5 minutes behind. I laughed. Yes, yes. Punctuality. We'll be sure to highlight the irony." Subramani walked off, muttering something about how the next train was running late. Again. Michael and I exchanged amused glances. "See? Irony is woven into our daily lives," I remarked. "We Indians complain about train delays, yet we continue to rely on them. The entire station is a microcosm of contradictions, a place of goodbyes and hellos, waiting and rushing, tears and laughter." Michael nodded. "And in the midst of it all stands you, pouring tea with a grin." I shrugged. "It's my small role in this grand play." A dusk revelation. As the day wore on, Michael went off to gather more notes, interview a few passengers, and photograph the station from different angles. The hours passed in their usual station rhythm. By dusk, the sky burned orange, and I lit a small lantern by my cart. A warm breeze ruffled the hair of passers-by, carrying the scent of fried snacks from a nearby stall. Michael returned, looking tired but satisfied. "Anna, I took some incredible shots of the station at sunset, the shadows on the tracks, the silhouettes of travellers. It's quite beautiful." I nodded, busy pouring chai into a clay cup for the night guard. "This station might be run down, but the light can make it look magical at times." He waited until I finished serving, then switched on his recorder for a final question of the day. "You've given me a wonderful picture of your courtship, marriage, and family beginnings. But what about conflict? Every marriage has its ups and downs. Any stories that stand out?" I handed the night guard his tea and collected a few coins. Once the guard ambled away, I turned my attention back to Michael. "We had our share of quarrels, yes. Money was always tight, and sometimes I'd come home late, exhausted, and a little snappy. Lakshmi would vent her frustrations about the leaky roof or a sick child who needed medicine we couldn't afford. In those moments, the reality of poverty could feel crushing. We'd argue, but we never let the sun rise on our anger. By morning, one of us would always break the tension, often through a joke or a silly gesture." Michael gave a gentle smile. "Those small acts of reconciliation can mean the world." "They do," I agreed. Looking back, I realize how crucial those moments were. We could have let resentment fester, but we chose instead to make light of our hardships. We faced them hand in hand. That's what kept our marriage strong. Wrapping up the day. Night fully set in, and the station lights buzzed, attracting moths to their artificial glow. Fewer travellers roamed the platform, though a late train to Madurai was expected soon. I began packing up extra cups and wiping down my cart. Michael tucked his recorder away, slipping it into his backpack. "Thank you for sharing so much today, Anna," he said, voice resonating with genuine gratitude. "Your story of meeting Lakshmi and building a life together, it's heartwarming. I'm sure my readers will relate to the universal themes of love, struggle, and laughter." I gave him my signature grin. If it can bring even a little hope or warmth to someone, it's worth sharing. He nodded, then looked away, as if searching for the right words. "I know there's more to tell about your daughters growing up and eventually, well, about losing Lakshmi, but I don't want to rush you." A twinge in my chest reminded me of the sorrow that still lingered, even decades later. "We'll get there," I said quietly. "One story at a time. After all, isn't life just a series of small stories woven together?" Michael seemed to mull over that, nodding. "Indeed it is. Tomorrow perhaps we can continue with those later chapters." "Tomorrow," I echoed, bowing my head in agreement. With that, he left for his lodge, camera bouncing softly against his chest. I wheeled my cart off the platform and back toward my shack. The faint glow of the kerosene lamp inside beckoned me. Raja, the station dog, followed for a few steps before settling down near the foot of the banyan tree as though standing guard for the night. Nighttime reflections. Inside my shack, I lit the lamp, the flame casting flickering shadows on the corrugated walls. My home was as humble as ever, but for a moment I could almost sense Lakshmi's presence, the warmth she had brought still lingering in every corner. Sometimes I thought I could still hear her laughter echo, see the shape of her sitting cross-legged on the floor, chopping vegetables for dinner, or feel her soft hands pat my shoulder, telling me everything would be all right. I spread out my bedding, lay down, and let my thoughts drift. I recalled our wedding day under the scorching sun, the uncertain yet hopeful looks of her parents, the hearty congratulations from the station community. My mind travelled to the times Lakshmi and I would watch the trains pass at night, a rare moment of calm when our children were asleep. We'd sit on the platform, whispering about our dreams. Maybe one day owning a small concrete house or sending the girls to a better school. Even though we never fully realized all those dreams, life gave us other gifts, moments of togetherness, laughter amidst adversity, and a deep sense of belonging. That was Lakshmi's legacy, teaching me that love can flourish anywhere, even in a cramped shack by a noisy train station, so long as you water it daily with kindness. As I drifted off, I remembered how she would say, "Gopal, every train that leaves the station is like a passing worry. Let it go, and another will come. But if you hold on to your smile, you'll always find a way through." I smiled to myself in the darkness, comforted by her memory. Tomorrow I would share more with Michael, dive deeper into the joys and sorrows that shaped me. But for tonight, I let the gentle hum of the station lull me to sleep, content in the knowledge that my story, our story, was finding new life in the ears of a curious Australian journalist. Episode 4, Trials on the Tracks, Lessons from Passers-by. If there's anything I've learned from decades spent on a small railway platform, it's that people often carry more than luggage when they travel. They bring their stories, the laughter and tears, the burdens and hopes that shape who they are. Over the years, I, Gopal, the Chai Walla of Thirupaloor Station, have served countless cups of tea to a parade of individuals from all walks of life. Some of them I barely recall, others left an indelible mark. After Michael and I concluded our talk about my marriage and family, he asked to hear about the many travellers who had crossed my path. Surely, he said, you've encountered all sorts of characters. People who taught you lessons, who made you laugh, or who brought trouble. I admitted that I had enough stories to fill a library, but perhaps I could share a few that stood out. And so, the next day, as I poured chai for the early morning crowd, I began to recall some of the most unforgettable passers-by who had left footprints on the platform and on my heart. Morning start, a curious glance at the past. I woke with the rooster's crow again, my shack dim in the pre-dawn light. For some reason, I felt a surge of energy. Maybe it was the prospect of sharing these memories with Michael, or maybe it was the joy of simply being alive and having something to look forward to. By 6 a.m., I'd set up my cart beneath the banyan tree, just as I had for decades. The tree's gnarled roots, which had cracked the platform tiles over time, felt like an old friend. People filtered in from the newly arrived train, and soon the station was filled with the soft murmur of morning greetings, the clanking of steel tiffin boxes, and the shuffle of slippers on concrete. Michael came in shortly after with his backpack, camera, and the same bright-eyed grin. "Ready for another round of stories, Gopal Anna?" he asked, pen and notepad already in hand. I laughed, passing him a steaming cup of ginger cardamom chai. "As ready as I'll ever be, Michael G." The holy man who claimed to have wings. One of the first stories I chose to share was about a travelling holy man, someone who appeared at the station unexpectedly, clad in saffron robes and chanting mantras under his breath. It must have been 2 decades ago. I remember him because he wore a peacock feather in his hair and claimed he possessed mystical powers. He would stretch out his arms, saying, "I can fly if I choose to. I simply refrain out of mercy for those who cannot." At first, I thought he was just another eccentric, but he drew a crowd. People were curious. Children ran up to him, asking, "Can you really fly?" He'd nod sagely, replying that he flew every night when humanity slept. He came to my cart, eyes sparkling like a man who'd seen the entire cosmos. "Give me your strongest chai," he said in a booming voice, "so that I might share my blessings with you." I poured him a hot cup, which he swallowed in great gulps. Then, with an air of grand theatricality, he declared, "This chai is fit for the gods," and pressed his palm over my forehead in a so-called blessing. Michael chuckled at my retelling. "Did you believe any of it?" he asked. I grinned. "I believe in the goodness of people, but I'm not sure if he flew at night." After finishing his chai, he asked for more, without paying, of course. I gave it to him willingly. He left a small strip of saffron cloth on my cart, saying it would protect me from evil spirits. "Did it work?" Michael teased. I shrugged. "Who knows?" But I kept it for years, tied around the handle of my kettle. Sometimes I think it brought good luck. My sales were decent whenever that cloth was around. Michael laughed, scribbling in his notepad. "Interesting. So that's lesson 1, I suppose? Keep an open mind?" I rubbed my chin. "Yes, an open mind. And an open heart. You never know which stranger might leave you with a small gift, a blessing, a trinket, or even just a curious memory." The cranky officer and the broken suitcase. Next, I described a more comical yet tense encounter with a middle-aged government officer. He wore a crisp white shirt, carried a leather briefcase, and had a permanent scowl etched on his face. It was a humid afternoon, the kind where the sweat clings to your back even if you stand still. This officer arrived on the 2:15 train, rushing off with an air of self-importance. He approached my cart, barking, "Chai, quick! I have an urgent meeting." I hurried to pour him a cup, but just then a stray dog darted between us, knocking against his leg. Startled, he dropped his briefcase, and it split open, spilling papers everywhere. The officer exploded into curses. I tried to help gather his documents, I explained to Michael, but he was fuming. He accused me of placing my cart in the wrong spot, though I'd been in the same place for years. Michael winced. "How did you handle it?" I gave a wry smile. I kept calm. I apologized, even though it wasn't really my fault. I offered him a fresh cup of chai, free of charge, but he was so angry he refused to take it. He stomped away, muttering threats about lodging a complaint. "And did he?" Michael asked. I shook my head. A few hours later, the same man returned, looking worn out, shirt stained with sweat. He approached my cart quietly. I thought he'd come to unleash more anger, but instead he said, "I'm sorry I was rude. It's been a terrible day." Then he bought 2 cups, one for him, one for me. I paused, a small grin tugging at my lips. We sipped our chai together, talking about the pressure he was under at his job. He admitted he shouldn't have taken it out on me. By the end, he was a different person entirely, almost friendly. Michael jotted down more notes. "So that's lesson 2, yes?" I nodded. Anger and stress can warp a person, but empathy and a hot cup of tea can bring them back to themselves. Sometimes what people need isn't judgment or retaliation, it's understanding, and maybe a place to cool down before they face the world again. A pilgrim's unexpected tears. Later that morning, after a brief rush of customers, we found another quiet moment. Michael sipped his chai thoughtfully, then asked, "What about sad stories? You must have encountered tragedy too." I exhaled, bracing myself. Yes, plenty. One that stands out is a young pilgrim who was on her way to Ramswaram. She wore simple cotton clothes and carried a small cloth bag. She must have been in her early 20s. I remember her face. It had a kind of fragile determination. He leaned in, curious. "What happened?" She came to my cart, asked for a cup of chai. As I poured, I noticed tears welling in her eyes. Trying to be polite, I didn't pry, but she broke down right there, sobbing. I learned that her mother had just passed away. She was going to Rameswaram to perform the final rites. She felt alone, having no siblings or other close relatives. Michael's expression softened. "That's heartbreaking." "It was," I agreed, my voice dropping. I didn't know how to console her. My words felt inadequate. So I just sat her down on the nearby bench, gave her a fresh cup of chai, and let her cry. Eventually, she told me about her mother's last wish, that her ashes be immersed in the holy waters at Rameswaram. She was terrified of traveling alone with a small urn in her bag. She kept worrying if she'd lose it or if someone would steal it. I paused, recalling how helpless she looked. All I could do was reassure her. "You're almost there, sister. Soon, your mother's soul will find peace." I told her to be careful, to keep the urn close. Maybe it was just common sense, but it seemed to comfort her. Michael jotted something, then looked up, empathy in his eyes. "Sometimes just being there is enough." I nodded. "Exactly." We parted ways when her train pulled in. I never saw her again, but I often think about her. I hope she found peace in completing her mother's last rites. It reminded me that every traveler on these tracks carries unseen sorrows, and that we can offer them a moment of solace, if only through a kind word or a cup of tea. The class reunion on the platform. As the day wore on, the station became busier. Groups of travelers poured in from midday trains, while vendors hustled to sell snacks and bottled water. After a frantic hour of serving chai, things calmed. That's when Michael and I regrouped near the banyan tree, where a gentle breeze stirred the branches. "Any stories that are just plain funny?" he asked, flipping to a fresh page in his notepad. I burst into a hearty laugh, wiping sweat from my brow. Oh, plenty. One time, a group of old classmates arranged a reunion at this station, of all places. They'd studied together at a school in a nearby town decades ago. Now they were in their 60s, some even in their 70s. They chose the station because it was a central meeting point for them, coming from different cities. Michael grinned. That's unusual. Did they hire the station hall or something? I shook my head, still chuckling. No, they just took over the platform benches. They brought along tiffin carriers packed with food, idlis, coconut chutney, sweets, and they had flasks of coffee. But they discovered my chai and decided they preferred that. They ended up staying all day, reminiscing about their school pranks and old teachers. They laughed so loudly that even the ticket collector told them to quiet down. He laughed too. I can imagine the scene. What made it hilarious was how each one boasted about their accomplishments, who had the biggest house, who had the most successful grandchildren. But by the end of the day, they all realized they were just happy to be alive and together. One uncle even said, "We're just old brinjals in the market, but at least we're still here." That cracked everyone up. Michael scribbled the phrase, "old brinjals in the market," with a smile. So I guess that's a lesson in celebrating life's simple pleasures? Indeed, I said, spreading my hands. Sometimes the best gatherings don't need fancy hotels or banquet halls, just a place to sit, a cup of chai, and people who share a history. The young runaway and an unexpected reunion. By late afternoon, the day had grown sultry, the air thick with humidity. Michael sat on a crate near my cart, sipping yet another cup of chai. He'd become quite the tea addict under my influence, but he didn't seem to mind. "What about stories of people who disappeared and then came back?" Michael asked. "I feel like train stations are places of comings and goings, but maybe someone left a lasting impact." I scratched my head, recalling various individuals. Then one memory surfaced, vivid and emotional. There was a boy, no older than 16, who ran away from home, I began. He showed up one evening, clutching a small cloth bag. He looked frightened, kept glancing over his shoulder like someone was chasing him. Michael's pen hovered. "Did you approach him?" I nodded. I offered him chai, but he was so nervous he refused at first. Eventually, hunger and thirst got the better of him. He told me he'd run away from an abusive father. He wanted to head to the big city, Chennai, to find work. The poor kid had hardly any money. Must have been terrifying for him. It was, I agreed. I was worried too. Runaways are vulnerable. So I let him rest near my cart for a while, gave him some food. I tried to get more information to contact someone who could help, but he was adamant about not going back. "What did you do?" I contacted a friend in the local police station just to ensure the boy wouldn't fall into the wrong hands. My friend promised to keep an eye out, not to force the boy home, but to see if there was a safer solution. Eventually, they contacted an NGO that helps street kids. The boy was reluctant, but he agreed to go with them rather than risk traveling alone with no plan. Michael exhaled, relief evident on his face. "That's kind of you, Anna. You might have saved his life." I smiled wistfully. I just did what I could. The boy left with the NGO folks. I never heard from him again until about 5 years later. One day, a smart-looking young man in a decent shirt showed up at my cart. He tapped my shoulder and said, "Do you remember me?" I stared, not recognizing him at first. Then he said, "I was that runaway you helped." Michael leaned forward, excited. "Wow, so he came back?" "Yes, and he had a box of sweets with him. He'd finished some vocational training through the NGO, got a job at a mechanics workshop in another town, and was visiting Thirupaloor for a wedding. He thanked me for not letting him slip into a dangerous life. Said the NGO had turned him around." Michael grinned broadly. "That must have felt amazing." I nodded, my heart swelling at the memory. It did. It reminded me that you never know how a small act of kindness can ripple through someone's life. And that's lesson... Oh, I've lost count. But it's one of the big ones. Moments of irony and reflection. Between stories, Michael and I paused to serve a fresh wave of travellers. A group of college students hopped off a train, lively with chatter about an upcoming cricket match. A middle-aged couple, arms full of shopping bags, ordered 2 cups, worrying aloud if they'd catch their connection. The cycle of station life continued, each swirl of activity a microcosm of everyday India. Eventually, the sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows across the platform. The air cooled slightly, and the golden light turned the station's worn concrete into something almost picturesque. Michael snapped a few photos, capturing that magic hour glow. "Anna," he said, returning to me, "thank you for sharing these stories. They're enlightening and so human." I smiled, giving the pot of chai a final stir before turning off the stove for the evening. "My pleasure. You asked for the trials on the tracks, and these are just a handful. There are countless more. Teachers, soldiers, fishermen, merchants, beggars, lovers sneaking away, each with a story to tell." He nodded, eyes thoughtful. "I see now why you say you have 1,000 stories. This station is like a stage where people's lives briefly intersect." "That's precisely it," I agreed. "They come and go, but for a moment we share the same space, maybe exchange a few words and a cup of chai. Sometimes that's all it takes to leave an impression." Michael turned off his recorder, slipping it into his backpack. "I think I have enough for today. We'll continue tomorrow. Maybe then you can tell me more about your daughters, how they grew up, and also about the hardships that you hinted at." I caught the weight in his voice, knowing he referred to the darker times, like losing Lakshmi. I nodded gently. "Yes, we can talk about that. There's laughter and grief intertwined in that chapter of my life. Perhaps it's best told over a late-night chai when the station is quieter." He agreed, standing up to stretch. "Looking forward to it, Anna. Good night for now." Evening silence and the unspoken lessons. After Michael headed off, I continued my routine of tidying up the cart and packing away my utensils. A few late passengers came by for a final cup. I served them with a weary but genuine smile. When the last train of the evening pulled away, I found myself alone on the platform except for Raja, the station dog. He trotted up, tail wagging, and I patted his head affectionately. "You've been around for many of these stories, haven't you, my friend?" I murmured. He tilted his head as if trying to understand. A soft breeze rustled the banyan leaves overhead. I looked up at the gnarled branches that had borne witness to all my years here, the people who passed by, the heartbreaks and joys, the hopes and disappointments. That tree was like an old sage, silently observing each chapter. I couldn't help but think about the pilgrim, the runaway boy, and even the cranky officer. Each one had taught me something about life's fragility, resilience, and the surprising power of a shared moment. Perhaps if more people understood how fleeting these encounters can be, they'd cherish them all the more. Under the flickering station light, I finished locking up my cart, then began the short walk back to my shack. My footsteps echoed against the empty concrete, as if the station itself was exhaling a sigh after a day's worth of comings and goings. Sometimes I wonder, if I hadn't stayed here all these years, would my life have been simpler or more complicated? Would I have been happier or more successful? But each time such thoughts arise, I remind myself, my place is here, between the trains, pouring chai, offering a smile, and collecting stories. As I entered my shack, the faint light of my kerosene lamp illuminating the cramped interior, I reflected on how grateful I was for the small wonders life had granted me. "One day at a time," I whispered, thinking of the many travelers who had taught me exactly that. "One day, one story, one cup of chai at a time." With that, I lay down to rest, lulled by the distant hum of a cargo train passing through. Tomorrow I'd awaken to new faces, new possibilities, and perhaps more stories worth telling. Episode 5. Laughter in the Face of Loss. On most days, you can hear my laughter bouncing off the station's weathered walls and the rusted metal of the passing trains. It's like a calling card. Some people say, even if we lose Gopal Anna in the crowd, we'd find him if we just listened for that laugh. But the truth is, my laughter was once overshadowed by a sorrow so deep, I feared I might never laugh again. Michael had been gently pressing me for details about Lakshmi's final days, about how I handled the grief of losing my wife and raising my daughters alone. Though I had hinted at that chapter of my life, I always danced around it like a reluctant performer. You see, some stories require extra care. If you pull them out carelessly, you risk tearing open old wounds. One late evening, after serving the steady trickle of travellers from the 9 p.m. train, Michael and I settled on the bench under the station's sole functioning ceiling fan. Outside, night had fallen over Thirupaloor Station, and the overhead lights buzzed, drawing a halo of moths. The air was thick and still, with only the faintest breeze stirring the banyan leaves. "Anna," Michael said softly, switching on his recorder, "shall we pick up where we left off, about Lakshmi's illness, and how you found the strength to smile through it all?" I nodded, exhaling slowly. Yes, it's time. A day like any other, until it wasn't. I'll never forget the moment my world shifted. It was a regular day at the station. Monsoon clouds hovered overhead, threatening rain. Lakshmi had come by in the afternoon with a tiffin of rice and sambar for me. We chatted about simple things: the cost of vegetables, the hole in our roof, the girl's progress in school. I remember her complaining about a persistent pain in her stomach, and I told her, "You should rest more, Lakshmi. Let's go to the clinic." She shrugged it off, as many overworked mothers do. "It's nothing, Gopal," she said, forcing a smile. "Just tired." Later that evening, while I was cleaning up my cart, a neighbor's child ran breathlessly toward me. "Gopal Anna, come quick. Auntie Lakshmi fainted." My heart lurched. I abandoned my cart right there, sprinting back to our shack in the slum. I found Lakshmi on the floor, conscious but weak, clutching her abdomen. Neighbors had gathered, fanning her, offering water and anxious concern. I knelt beside her, my heart hammering. "We're going to the hospital," I announced. She tried to protest, but I insisted. With the help of a friend, I half carried, half supported her to the nearest government hospital, about 2 kilometers away. It was a small, overcrowded place, walls peeling with dampness, corridors echoing with coughs and cries. Michael listened intently. "Did they admit her right away?" he asked, pen poised. "Yes, but everything moved slowly. She lay on a bed in a ward crowded with patients, and the staff seemed overwhelmed. By the time a doctor examined her, I could see fear in Lakshmi's eyes." I paused, clearing my throat. Even years later, the memory constricts my chest. They told me it was some kind of ulcer or infection, maybe worse. She needed tests, medication. We couldn't afford a better hospital. We had to make do with what we had. The battle and the prayer. Lakshmi stayed in that hospital for weeks. Our daughters, Vali and Radha, then in their teenage years, would rush over after school to see their mother. I spent my days running between the station and the ward, trying to keep up with the bills while ensuring Lakshmi had some comfort. Neighbors took turns looking after the girls when I was away. "She was so brave," I told Michael. "Never once did she cry in front of the children. She cracked jokes, asked about the station gossip, teased me for wearing the same old shirt day after day." Michael's face softened. "That sounds like her way of preserving normalcy." I nodded. "Exactly. I'd bring her homemade chai. Hospital chai tasted like dishwater, and we'd sit on that creaky bed, sipping in silence. She'd hold my hand and say, 'We've been through hard times before. We'll get through this too.' I wanted to believe it. I prayed to every god and goddess I knew." The wave of support. Word spread around Thirupaloor Station that Lakshmi was ill. To my surprise, the station community banded together like I'd never seen. The fruit vendor donated part of his daily earnings. The newspaper seller, Narayan, passed around a small cardboard box for donations. The station master approved an informal fund. Even passengers, regular ones who knew me only as the friendly Chai Walla, slipped me a few rupees or pressed a comforting hand on my shoulder. Michael looked up from his notes, eyes shining. That's remarkable kindness. That's the heart of this place, I replied. Everyone pitched in. One traveler, an older woman on her way to a pilgrimage, dropped a small silver coin in my hand and said, "This is blessed. Your wife will be fine." Another passenger offered to speak to a doctor friend in the city. The generosity was overwhelming. Yet, despite all the help and prayers, Lakshmi's condition worsened. The doctors suspected complications beyond just an ulcer, perhaps an underlying condition. They tried their best, but resources were limited. Medication was delayed, tests took too long, and Lakshmi's body grew weaker. The final evening. It was a muggy evening in July. Monsoon rains battered the tin roof of the hospital, turning the corridors into muddy puddles. The girls sat on either side of Lakshmi's bed, dozing, while I watched her breathe, each exhalation seeming like an effort. She gestured for me to come closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Gopal," she said, "promise me something." I leaned in, tears threatening to spill. "Anything." She smiled faintly, eyes half-lidded. "No matter what happens, keep that laughter of yours. It's what made me fall in love with you. Don't let sorrow take it away." A sob escaped me, and I buried my face in her hand. "Lakshmi, don't say such things." She tried to scold me, but she was too weak. Instead, she gave my hand a gentle squeeze. "I'm serious. Our daughters need that laughter in their lives. The station needs it. This world needs it." In that moment, as the rain pounded and thunder rolled, I realized she was preparing me for her departure. Soon after, her breathing grew shallower, and by dawn, she was gone. The doctors declared her time of death just as the morning light crept through the grey storm clouds. The aftermath. Michael had set down his pen. He simply listened, eyes glistening with empathy. Nearby, a late-night passenger strolled by, noticing our subdued tone. He quietly moved along, sensing something sacred in the air. "I'm so sorry, Anna," Michael managed to say. "Losing someone like that, it must have been devastating." I swallowed, my throat tight. It felt like someone tore my heart out. The funeral was small and somber. Our daughters were inconsolable. I tried my best to be strong for them, but inside, I was a broken man. The station, my second home, felt foreign without Lakshmi dropping by or scolding me for working too long. Michael reached out, placed a hand on my arm. "How did you move forward from there?" I took a deep breath, remembering Lakshmi's final request. Initially, I didn't. I operated on autopilot. I'd wake up, drag my cart to the platform, mechanically pour chai, and go home at night like a zombie. No smiles, no laughter. My daughters worried I was losing myself. The station folks tried to cheer me up, but it all felt hollow. The day laughter returned. One evening, about a month after Lakshmi's passing, the station master asked me to join a small gathering. A group of staff and regular passengers had arranged a puja prayer ceremony for Lakshmi's memory near the banyan tree. They lit a small lamp, placed marigold garlands around a framed photo of her, one I didn't even know they had. People prayed, some wept. Even the cranky ticket collector offered a moment of silence. During this gathering, my daughter, Vali, tugged at my sleeve. "Appa," she whispered, "you have to laugh again. Amma told us to remind you." Her words cut through my numbness like a knife. I looked at the photo of Lakshmi, her wide, kind eyes, that playful smile. I recalled our countless shared jokes, the silly banter, the pranks we'd pull on each other, and something inside me clicked into place. That night, After everyone left, I stood by the cart with my daughters. The younger one, Radha, cracked a small pun about how the station dog, Raja, looked like an old uncle who forgot to shave. It was the sort of silly observation Lakshmi used to make. I don't know why, but it triggered something, and I let out a quiet chuckle. A second later, it turned into full-blown laughter, like a dam breaking. Michael's eyes lit up. That must have been cathartic. Oh, it was, I replied, nodding. The girls stared at me in disbelief. Then they joined in, tears streaming from our eyes, but mixed with laughter. Passengers passing by must have thought we were mad, crying and laughing at the same time. But in that moment, I felt Lakshmi's presence, as if she was standing there, laughing with us. I paused, letting the memory wash over me. That's when I understood. Honoring her wasn't about wearing a solemn face forever. It was about celebrating the joy she brought into our lives and continuing to share that joy with others. Reclaiming the station. In the weeks that followed, I slowly found my rhythm again. I started greeting passengers with my old grin, asking about their families, offering small jokes about the tardy trains. The station seemed to breathe easier as I rediscovered my spirit. Some folks whispered that I was faking it, trying too hard. But the truth was, I felt Lakshmi guiding me, reminding me not to let sadness bury the laughter that had once defined me. Michael, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke. So that's how you regained your joy. I nodded. Yes. It wasn't instantaneous or complete. Grief still visits me sometimes, usually at night when the station is quiet and I feel her absence. But I don't let it consume me. I honor her by living as she wanted me to, finding reasons to smile in everyday moments. A train thundered in the distance, its whistle echoing through the night. We watched the headlights cut through the darkness, sending a gust of wind that rattled the station sign. A handful of passengers disembarked, hurrying past us with tired expressions. I served them chai, smiling softly. The daughters move on. Michael flipped to a fresh page in his notepad. What about your daughters? How did they cope? Vali and Radha were strong, I said, pride tinging my voice. They mourned, of course, but they had each other. Over time, they threw themselves into their studies, determined to make their mother proud. Vali went on to become a schoolteacher. She married a kind man, moved to a town in Kerala, and now has 2 children of her own. Radha studied commerce, found a job in a small finance company, and ended up marrying a colleague. She lives in Bengaluru these days. Michael smiled. That's wonderful. Do they visit often? Not as often as they'd like. They have busy lives, but they call me regularly. Sometimes they scold me. Appa, you're working too hard at your age. I just laugh and say, but who else will give the station its daily chai? I visit them occasionally too, though I find the big city overwhelming. He jotted down a note. And do they share your sense of humor? I grinned. They do. They remember Lakshmi's love for jokes and her ability to find something funny in any situation. When we gather, we often tell old family tales that end in laughter, about how Lakshmi chased off a stray goat that tried to eat her sari, or how she once slipped on a wet platform but turned it into a comedy routine. Renewed purpose. Night fell deeper, a gentle hush settling over the station. The only sounds were the chirping of crickets and the distant rumble of another train approaching from Madurai. I leaned back against the bench, feeling an odd blend of exhaustion and relief. Michael switched off his recorder for a moment. Anna, he said softly, this is one of the most moving stories I've heard. Thank you for sharing. You've shown me that laughter can be a powerful force for healing. I gave him a half smile, my mind drifting back to Lakshmi's final words. It can. For me, it's not just an emotional response. It's a promise I made to my wife. He reached out, shaking my hand gently. I think your story will resonate with a lot of people, everyone who's lost someone, but found a way to keep living, to keep smiling. I nodded, swallowing a lump in my throat. I hope so. A mysterious passenger at night. Just then, the Madurai train screeched into the station. A ragged collection of passengers spilled out, a few pilgrims, some weary labourers, and an older man who looked strangely familiar. He wore a dusty dhoti and carried a patched-up cloth bag. He paused by my cart, peering at me with squinting eyes. "Gopal," he rasped. "Is that you?" I blinked, stepping forward. "Yes, sir. Have we met?" He nodded, a flicker of recognition in his gaze. "It's been years. I once travelled through here back when your wife was alive. You both offered me tea when I had no money." Memories sparked. That old man who said he was travelling for his son's wedding but lost his wallet. I vaguely recalled giving him a free cup and some bread. "How are you?" I asked, genuinely curious. He shook his head, tears welling. "My son died a year ago. I'm travelling to see my grandson. He's all I have left." My heart twisted. "I'm so sorry for your loss." He looked at me, eyes brimming with sadness. Then, strangely, a soft smile crept onto his weathered face. "I remember how you and your wife laughed together. Even when I could see you didn't have much yourselves, you told me, 'Laughter costs nothing, friend. Take as much as you need.' I never forgot those words." Michael stood quietly, watching this exchange. I felt tears prick my eyes. So many stories, so many connections that thread back through the station's history. I handed the man a cup of chai, free of charge again. He sipped it, gratitude shining in his eyes. For a moment, we stood in silence, two people bound by shared memories and the universal language of loss. That unbreakable thread. After the old man caught another train to continue his journey, Michael turned to me, visibly moved. "Your impact here, it's remarkable. People come back even years later, remembering your kindness." I let out a small chuckle, though it was tinged with sadness. "Kindness is the only currency that never loses its value, Michael G. Lakshmi taught me that. Even in death, she's still teaching it through me." He nodded, voice hushed. "I see that now." For a while, we let the night envelop us in its soft darkness. The station began to wind down, the fruit vendor closed shop, the ticket collector dimmed the overhead lights. I packed up my cart, ensuring everything was secure. "Shall we call it a night?" Michael asked gently. "Yes," I said. "I think we should. I've shared enough heavy memories for one day." He picked up his backpack, and we walked together toward the exit gate. Stars glimmered faintly above, the moon a thin crescent. The slum loomed in the distance, a cluster of tin roofs reflecting stray beams of light. Before parting ways, Michael glanced at me. "Anna, I want to thank you again. This isn't just an assignment for me. It's a privilege to hear your story." I patted his shoulder, feeling a warmth in my chest. "And it's a privilege for me to share it. It keeps Lakshmi's spirit alive, you know? As long as someone hears her name, remembers her laughter, she's never truly gone." Michael gave a small bow of respect, then headed off to his lodge. I made my way home, stepping carefully over puddles in the uneven lane. Inside my shack, I lit the kerosene lamp, letting the flickering flame chase away the shadows. I thought of Lakshmi, her final request echoing in my mind. Keep your laughter. She understood something profound. We can't eliminate pain, but we can choose to face it with grace, humor, and resilience. Stretching out on my thin mattress, I let out a long breath. Tomorrow was another day. More trains, more travelers, more stories. And yes, more laughter. Because no matter how many storms life hurled at me, that laughter was my raft, a promise I intended to keep until my last breath. Episode 6. Journeys Shared. The Pilgrims and the Stray Dog. I have always believed that every journey is made lighter by a bit of kindness, and the railway station at Thirupaloor seems to exist as a testament to that. Over the years, it has welcomed countless pilgrims on their way to holy sites across South India. Some are bound for Ramswaram, seeking to bathe in the sacred waters. Others head to Madurai to offer prayers at the grand Meenakshi temple. A few venture further north to Tirupati, hoping the Lord Venkateswara will bless them with prosperity or grant a lifelong wish. As the station's resident Chai Walla, I've crossed paths with many of these pilgrims, each carrying not just bundles of offerings, but also stories of faith, hardship, and occasional humor. And in these shared journeys, I've come to see how even the simplest gestures, like a cup of hot chai or a friendly chat, can hold profound significance for those on a spiritual quest. Michael had been keen to hear about such encounters. "Pilgrimages fascinate me," he said one morning, as I handed him a cup of fresh ginger cardamom chai. "In my country, people travel too, but not always in large groups for religious reasons. I'd love to know what kinds of experiences you've witnessed here." I offered him a grin. "Plenty, my friend. Gather around my cart, and I'll tell you a few tales. But first, let me introduce you to our station's most loyal companion, Raja." How Raja found a home. Raja is our station dog, a rangy stray with patchy fur and a perpetually wagging tail. Some claim he's part hound, others see a bit of the native pariah dog in his features. Either way, he's undeniably sweet-natured and has a knack for turning up wherever kindness is offered. I first noticed Raja about 6 years ago, skulking near the waste bin at the far end of the platform. He looked scrawny, with ribs poking through his dusty coat, and he limped slightly. Travellers sometimes chased him away, fearing he carried disease. But I saw something in his eyes, an odd mixture of longing and resignation, as if he didn't expect help. One night, while waiting for the last train, I spotted him shivering in the shadow of a bench. I couldn't ignore that trembling form. "Come here, boy," I called gently, clicking my tongue. He eyed me warily. I held out a piece of biscuit, one that a passenger had left behind. Slowly, he inched forward, each step tentative. When he finally reached me, he snatched the biscuit and darted back a few paces, chewing as though it might vanish if he lingered too long. Over the weeks that followed, I made it a habit to set aside scraps for him, a bit of rice or a morsel of chapati. At first, he kept his distance, tail tucked between his legs, but little by little, he realized no harm would come from me. One evening, he mustered the courage to lick my fingertips, and that was it. We became unlikely friends, a chai seller and a stray dog, both fixtures of the station. Michael listened to this story with a fond smile. "Animals have a way of sensing good souls," he remarked. "Perhaps," I said, rubbing the top of Raja's head as the dog sat by my cart. "Or maybe he just wanted the biscuits. Either way, he's become a permanent part of station life." The pilgrim who lost his sandals. Not long after Raja settled in, I had one of the more humorous pilgrim encounters. A group of pilgrims came from Karnataka, heading south to Ramaswaram. They wore simple white dhotis and carried small cloth bags with their essentials. One of them, a lanky man named Raju, had dozed off on a bench with his sandals neatly placed beside him. When he woke up, his sandals were gone. Panic ensued. Pilgrims are often strict about certain practices. Some vow not to purchase new footwear during a pilgrimage. Others can't afford to replace a pair easily. In Raju's case, it was both. He paced around the platform, wailing about how he couldn't continue without his trusted sandals. Michael, who happened to be there that morning, looked concerned. "Do you see thefts like this often?" he asked me. I shrugged. "Sometimes. More likely, it was a hungry dog or a monkey that dragged them away. Or maybe a careless passenger knocked them onto the tracks." Raju's fellow pilgrims searched high and low, asking vendors, travellers, even the station master if they'd seen a pair of battered sandals. No luck. Frustrated and close to tears, Raju slumped on the bench. Raja, who had been napping near the fruit stall, suddenly trotted up, nose twitching. He sniffed the air, his ears perking. Then he bounded off toward the far end of the platform where an old storeroom stood. A moment later, he emerged proudly with something clenched in his jaws. Raju's sandals. A cheer erupted from the pilgrims, and Raju knelt down to pat Raja's head, tears of relief streaming down his face. "Bless you, dog," he exclaimed. "You've saved my pilgrimage." Michael and I exchanged amused grins. I poured the group a round of chai to celebrate, and they departed on the next train, chanting and praising the miracle dog of Thirupaloor. "That's quite a story," Michael mused, jotting down notes. "They'll probably talk about Raja for years to come." I chuckled. "Yes, and they might even start a rumor that he's a divine reincarnation of a guardian deity. Who knows? Stranger things have happened." Nighttime chats. The essence of pilgrimage. One quiet evening, when the station had emptied of its daytime bustle, Michael and I found ourselves chatting at my cart. Raja lay curled at our feet, occasionally thumping his tail whenever I reached down to scratch his ears. "Anna," Michael began, "you've seen so many pilgrims pass through. Do you think these journeys really change them?" I paused, contemplating. In many cases, yes. A pilgrimage isn't just a physical journey. It's emotional, spiritual. People carry their burdens, their prayers, their guilt, and their hopes to these holy places. The idea is to leave something behind, sin, worry, or sorrow, and come back renewed. Michael nodded thoughtfully. "Have you witnessed any transformations firsthand?" I smiled, recalling a particular woman in her 50s who had visited regularly on her way to various temples, Kalahasti, Tirupati, Palani. Over the course of a year, she passed through Thirupaloor Station multiple times, each time looking a little lighter, a bit more at peace. On her final trip, she stopped by my cart and said, "You've been part of my journey too, Gopal. Your chai and your smile kept me going." She never explained what personal struggles she was dealing with, but I could see the relief in her eyes, like someone who had slowly unburdened her soul across each pilgrimage. Michael, engrossed, scribbled in his notepad. "It's amazing how a station can become a checkpoint for so many internal journeys, not just physical ones." "Exactly," I said. "Sometimes, after visiting temples, people pass by me again on their return trip. The conversation is different, more introspective, or sometimes more jubilant. They leave blessings for me in the station, as though we're part of their spiritual tapestry." The unexpected arrival of sadhus. Another memorable day involved a group of saffron-clad sadhus, holy men, who appeared in the midst of a hot afternoon, chanting Sanskrit shlokas. Their hair was matted into long dreadlocks, and their foreheads bore the marks of vibhuti, sacred ash. They carried no luggage, only small cloth bags with essentials. The entire station seemed to quiet as they arrived. There's a certain aura about a group of devout sadhus that commands respect, or at least curiosity. They strode right up to my cart, eyes bright against weathered faces. "Baba," one of them addressed me, though I'm no sadhu. "Can we have tea?" I nodded, trying not to stare. "Yes, of course, Swamiji. Milk tea or black tea?" They conferred briefly, then decided on milk tea, though they asked for less sugar. As I poured out the steaming chai, they began reciting a prayer for my good fortune. It was melodic, echoing across the platform. A handful of travelers watched from a respectful distance, uncertain if they should approach or keep away. Michael took a few photographs, carefully after asking permission from the sadhus. The holy men didn't seem to mind. In fact, one turned to Michael and said, "Spread the word of faith and compassion, son. That's all we ask." After finishing their tea, the sadhus rummaged in their tiny bags to find a few coins. I tried to refuse payment, feeling it was wrong to charge holy men who barely had any possessions, but they insisted. Work must be honoured, said one. You gave us your tea, we give you our offering. It is the balance of life. Michael later remarked on that line, writing it down. A wonderful philosophy, he murmured. Everyone has a role, and each role deserves respect. I nodded. Exactly. I'd like to think my role, as simple as it is, helps keep the station's spirit alive. A late-night tale of devotion. Sometimes the most poignant pilgrim stories unfold after sundown, when the station is cloaked in darkness and only a few lanterns burn. One such night, as the clock neared midnight, a single passenger stepped off the train, a frail older man, likely in his 70s, carrying a small cloth bundle. He moved slowly, each step laboured, leaning on a makeshift cane. He approached my cart, chest rising and falling with exertion. "Son," he addressed me, "could I trouble you for a cup of chai? I have a little money." "Of course, Tata," I said, using the Tamil word for grandfather. "Sit down, I'll bring it to you." He settled on a bench, looking like he might doze off at any moment. I poured him a mild, lightly sweet chai to soothe his tired bones. When I brought it over, he thanked me quietly, cradling the clay cup in both hands. "I'm on my way to Ramaswaram," he whispered, "to do penance for my wife. She passed many years ago, but I promised her I'd visit the holy waters when I turned 75. My heart clenched, recalling my own loss of Lakshmi. "You're alone, Thatha?" He nodded, sipping the chai. "My children live far away, busy with their own lives. No one could come with me, but that's all right. My wife and I made this plan decades ago. We said, whoever is left will complete the journey on both our behalves." Michael, who had been nearby observing, inched closer, drawn by the quiet gravity of the man's story. Despite his fatigue, Thatha's eyes shone with determination. "I've come this far," he murmured. "Another few hours, and I'll be there. Then I can finally say, I kept my word." We sat with him for a while, offering more chai and some biscuits. He told us about his wife, how they met in their teens, married young, and struggled through poverty. He recounted how she always lit a tiny lamp each evening, praying for his health. "Her prayers must have worked," he said with a wry grin. "I've outlived her by almost a decade." When his connecting train arrived, he stood up, wincing at the pain in his knees. Michael and I helped him board, stowing his little cloth bundle safely on the seat. Before the train pulled away, he clasped our hands. "Thank you, my sons," he said, voice trembling with emotion. "Your kindness is one more blessing on this pilgrimage." We watched the train disappear into the night, feeling a profound respect for the quiet devotion that carried him forward. Laughter and philosophy. Early the next day, Michael asked me, "How do you reconcile the heaviness of some of these pilgrim stories with your day-to-day routine? It seems like a lot to take in." I reflected on his question as I served the morning rush. "It can be heavy, yes," I admitted, "but it also reminds me how interconnected we are. Each person's story might seem unique, but there's always a common thread. Longing, devotion, regret, hope. It's all part of the human tapestry." Michael sipped his chai, nodding thoughtfully. "And maybe that's why you keep your laughter, because you see that life is more than just sorrow." I smiled. "Exactly. If I got weighed down by every tragedy and worry that passed through here, I'd be crushed. But I remember Lakshmi's advice. Keep your laughter, Gopal. It's my way of saying I acknowledge life's burdens, but I won't let them defeat me." In the background, Raja barked at a cow that wandered onto the platform. A few pilgrims waiting for the Ramaswaram train giggled at the spectacle, a dog trying to shoo a cow, much larger than itself. The station master hurried over, flailing his arms to steer the cow away. Michael chuckled at the commotion. Even the animals here seem to embody that sense of everyday drama. I shrugged with a grin. That's Thirupaloor Station for you. Always a mix of chaos, devotion, humour, and heart. The stray dog's blessing. A couple of days later, a small group of North Indian pilgrims arrived, their bright turbans and colourful dupattas catching the early morning sunlight. They looked a bit out of place, flipping through phrase books to communicate in broken Tamil or English. I managed a few words in Hindi, having picked up bits and pieces from travellers over the years. As they waited for a connecting train to Madurai, Raja approached them, wagging his tail. One of the older women in the group bent down to pat his head. She appeared delighted by his friendliness. She asked me in halting English, "Dog name?" I grinned, tapping my chest. "Raja means king." She repeated the name, smiling, and rummaged through her bag. To my surprise, she pulled out a small container of sweets, prasad from a temple she had visited up north, and offered some to me. Then, with permission, she placed a tiny morsel in front of Raja, almost reverently, as though bestowing a blessing. Raja sniffed it, then gobbled it up, tail going wild. The group laughed, and a young boy took a photo on his phone. Michael captured the scene as well, enthralled by this spontaneous exchange of kindness across cultural and linguistic barriers. I turned to Michael, feeling a well of gratitude. "This is what keeps me going," I said softly. "Moments like these, where strangers become friends, even for a minute, and everything else fades away." He nodded, eyes shining. "It's beautiful, Anna. Pure, unspoken connection." Closing thoughts on a quiet evening. That evening, when the station was nearly empty, Michael and I reclined on a pair of wooden stools by my cart. The overhead lights flickered, and somewhere in the distance, a temple bell rang. Raja curled at our feet, dozing. "You've shown me how pilgrims aren't just travellers," Michael said, voice low in the hush of twilight. "They're living stories of faith, struggle, and transformation. And you, in your own way, are part of each story, a gentle presence, offering tea and compassion." I let out a soft laugh. A bit grandiose, perhaps, but I won't deny it. We all play our roles. Mine happens to be pouring chai, sharing a smile, and maybe imparting a small dose of hope. Michael switched off his recorder, content with the day's stories. We sat there for a while, listening to the crickets chirp and the occasional hum of a passing freight train. Even the usual bustle seemed at peace, as though the station itself was taking a breath. After a stretch of companionable silence, Michael spoke again, a hint of teasing in his tone. "So, Anna, does Raja ever go on a pilgrimage himself?" I chuckled, glancing down at the snoozing dog. "He has his own brand of devotion, maybe to leftover biscuits and the warmth of the station. But who knows? Perhaps in his dog dreams he visits every holy site in India, collecting blessings and stories to bring back here." Michael laughed. "I wouldn't put it past him." Eventually, we stood and parted ways, Michael to his modest lodge, and me to my little shack. Raja followed dutifully, though halfway he decided to plop down near the banyan tree, as if keeping a silent vigil for any late arrivals. As I ambled through the slum's narrow lanes, I reflected on the day's conversations. Each pilgrim's story, whether comedic, poignant, or uplifting, reminded me that life itself is a pilgrimage. We're all traveling from one station to the next, burdened with hopes, fears, regrets, and dreams. If we're lucky, we meet people who offer us small mercies along the way. Arriving at my shack, I lit the kerosene lamp and lay down on my bedding. The faint flicker illuminated the worn photo of Lakshmi on the wall. Her image seemed to glow, as if she approved of how the day had unfolded. A contented smile curved my lips. I closed my eyes, letting the comforting sense of cardamom and the memory of chanting pilgrims fill my mind. Tomorrow would bring another set of travellers, another chance to offer chai and companionship. And so, with that gentle reassurance, I drifted off, thinking, yes, we're all pilgrims. Some of us just carry a kettle and cups instead of holy offerings. Episode 7. Day and night at the station. Celebrations, tragedies, and ironies. Sleep is a peculiar thing for me these days. I snatch it in fragments between trains, an hour or two before dawn, a short nap under the afternoon sun, and if I'm lucky, a few hours at night before the midnight express thunders in. Thirupaloor Station is a place of perpetual motion, a stage where each act is dictated by the train schedule. Over the decades, I've grown to see how this rhythm shapes the lives of everyone who passes through, myself included. One evening, as the sky bled into shades of orange and pink, Michael met me by my chai cart, eyes glinting with curiosity. He'd been going around, interviewing passengers and staff about the station's around-the-clock routine, and he seemed eager to share his findings. "Anna," he called, taking a seat on a wooden crate near my cart. Today I spoke to a night shift porter, and he told me some incredible stories, everything from wedding parties arriving at 2 a.m. to a couple who nearly missed their train because they fell asleep on a bench. I'd love to hear your perspective on this 24-hour world. I handed him a steaming clay cup, smiling. Well, my friend, this station never sleeps. Day and night, it's a little universe of arrivals, departures, celebrations, tragedies, and of course, ironies. He adjusted his recorder. I'm all ears. Dawn. A hopeful beginning. The first train arrives just after sunrise, typically from Chennai, and brings a certain energy. People spill out onto the platform clutching tiffin boxes, small children in tow, and that half-asleep, half-excited look. I love observing them at that hour. The office workers adjusting their ties or ironing out wrinkles in crisp shirts, mentally preparing for a day's toil. Students in neat uniforms anxious about exams. Street vendors carting heaps of vegetables or flowers, hoping to sell their goods in the bustling market area. It's like a rebirth each morning, I told Michael. The station wakes up, the sun creeps in, and we all begin anew. I've seen hopeful looks on people's faces in the early hours, as if the day might hold some promise they've been waiting for. He sipped his chai, nodding. What about your own routine at that time? I pointed at my cart. I roll this old friend out around 5:30 a.m., heat water, arrange the tea leaves, ginger, cardamom. By 6 a.m., a line usually forms, the first wave of customers needing that jolt of caffeine. It's hectic, but somehow refreshing, like we're all greeting the day together. Midday. Swelter. Laughter and frustrations. If dawn is hopeful, midday at Thirupaloor can be brutal. The sun hammers the corrugated station roof, turning the platform into a sizzling skillet. People fan themselves with newspapers, children whine for ice water, and tempers can fray. I recounted one midday scene for Michael. A vendor bickering with a passenger over the price of bananas, sweat dripping down his brow. The station master chiding a fruit seller for occupying space meant for waiting passengers. A group of travellers complaining about the tardy train. Amid this tension, ironically, there's often laughter too, perhaps from a group of college students sharing jokes, or from a mother trying to calm her fussy toddler with a silly song. It's a strange contrast, I explained, pouring chai into little plastic cups. People are hot, exhausted, and irritated, yet someone will crack a joke, and suddenly the whole platform is laughing. I guess we need that release under the scorching sun. Michael grinned. Laughter seems to find its way into every corner of this station. I winked. That's what keeps us sane. Afternoons of festive cheer. Certain afternoons, the station transforms into a carnival of sorts, especially during festivals like Pongal, Deepavali, or even smaller local temple festivals. Families travel en masse, decked in bright attire. Children tote boxes of sweets or new clothes. Elders carry garlands and puja items. It was during one such festival, Pongal, the harvest celebration, that I witnessed a delightful sight. A group of village women arrived with decorated pots and sugarcane stalks. They'd missed their bus and decided to catch a train instead. While waiting, they started humming traditional folk songs. Another group joined in, clapping and adding percussion on their steel tiffin carriers. Before long, half the platform was caught up in the rhythm. Even the station master peeked out of his office, tapping a foot. Soon a small crowd gathered to watch. Children giggled, old men nodded in time to the music, and a few travellers recorded the impromptu performance on their phones. Michael, fascinated, asked if such spontaneous festivities were common. I nodded. Oh, yes. During holidays, the station becomes an extension of the festival grounds. People carry their celebrations with them. Sometimes they even distribute sweet pongal or mithai to strangers. It's a reminder that joy can be found anywhere, even on a crowded platform under a blazing sun. The irony of grand send-offs. While festival cheer is a high point, the station also hosts plenty of farewells. Relatives arrive in large numbers to bid goodbye to loved ones, flashing cameras, hugging tearful aunties, and wailing children who don't want to part. One ironically funny scenario I often see. A big family stands on the platform, loaded with flower garlands, sweets, and even fireworks occasionally, though that's not exactly allowed. They make a grand spectacle of sending off one or two travellers. The train arrives, and after the emotional goodbyes, people scramble to push the traveller onto the coach, worried they'll miss the door. As the train starts to move, the group continues to wave frantically. The traveller inside does the same, tears in their eyes. Then the train screeches to a halt again because of some minor signal delay. Everyone suddenly stops waving, feeling awkward. Should we keep crying or not? Michael laughed when I described this. That's so typically human, he said. All that drama, only for the train to stop again. What happens next? Usually there's a sheepish laugh, I replied, and they resume conversation. When the train finally pulls away for good, the goodbyes start all over again, like a replay of the same scene. He scribbled it down, amusement lighting his face. I'll have to include that. It's too precious to miss. Sunset, a calm before the storm. As evening descends, the sky over Thirupaloor Station turns a vibrant orange, fading into dusky purple. The heat gives way to a more bearable warmth, and a gentle breeze sometimes rustles the banyan leaves. For a couple of hours around sunset, there's a lull. Most local trains have passed, and the next wave of arrivals hasn't begun. This is when I sometimes sit on a bench with Raja dozing at my feet, letting my mind wander. It's also when Michael and I found we could have the most heartfelt conversations, unhurried, contemplative moments. I explained to him how I see that time as a breath the station takes, inhaling the day's frenzy and exhaling a brief pause before the night rush. Some travellers arrive then, but they're fewer. Business folks wrapping up meetings, students returning from exams, or tourists who timed their trips to avoid peak hours. It's almost poetic, Michael mused, sipping an evening chai, like the station is catching its breath. I nodded. Yes, I've come to appreciate that pause. In those moments, I often reflect on the day's encounters, who I've served, what they said, and whether they left with a lighter heart. Nightfall festivities, weddings on wheels. Night brings its own drama to the station, especially when wedding parties travel by train. It's not uncommon to see an entire entourage, bride and groom in glittering attire, relatives in ornate saris, everyone bustling with excitement. They carry drums and sometimes even portable stereo systems, turning the platform into a mini wedding venue. I recalled a time a newlywed couple stepped onto the platform at nearly midnight. The groom wore a dazzling sherwani. The bride's lehenga shimmered under the station lights. They were surrounded by a gaggle of family members shouting, "Hurry! The train won't wait!" Drummers pounded out a celebratory rhythm that echoed off the concrete walls. A few onlookers joined in, clapping and whooping. Even the station master tried to scold them for causing a disturbance, but he ended up smiling at the sheer exuberance of it all. Michael found this fascinating. Travelling for a wedding. How typical is that? He asked. Quite common, I said. In India, families are often scattered across regions. Trains become the great connector for big events. And so, the station witnesses these bursts of festivity at odd hours, like an unscheduled carnival. Tragedies in the shadows. But for all the celebration, the station also becomes a backdrop for tragedy. I've seen families weeping for loved ones lost, policemen escorting unclaimed bodies, or tearful farewells for someone departing for a funeral in another city. One midnight, I recall a small group huddled on the bench, faces etched with grief. They were transporting a casket in the luggage compartment, bringing a relative's remains back to the ancestral village for final rites. The station was eerily quiet, the overhead lights casting stark shadows. I saw them clinging to each other for comfort, tears glistening in the harsh glow. It was a somber scene, I told Michael, my voice subdued. I offered them chai, hoping to provide at least a small warmth in that moment of profound sorrow. They barely spoke, just nodded in gratitude. Michael's expression mirrored the heaviness of that recollection. It must be hard, witnessing such pain. I sighed. It is. But that's life at a station. Birth, love, loss, everything passes through here. We're like a mirror that reflects every facet of human existence. The irony of delays. Late-night trains are notorious for delays, sometimes an hour, sometimes more. When travelers are exhausted from a long day, these delays can stir tempers or, conversely, lead to humorous camaraderie. I recounted one incident when a late-night express arrived 3 hours behind schedule. Furious passengers poured onto the platform, complaining to anyone who would listen. Station staff, the chai seller, me, even the stray dog, as if Raja could fix the trains. In an ironic twist, the moment the train was ready to depart, half of those grumbling passengers had drifted off to sleep in corners or on benches. The announcements blared, "Train number 12,631 is now departing." And suddenly chaos ensued. Drowsy travellers scrambled to collect their luggage, children started crying, and someone nearly forgot an elderly relative dozing by the waiting room door. Michael laughed heartily at that. It's almost like a comedic play. Everyone is furious at the delay, but then they themselves aren't ready when the train finally arrives. I grinned. Exactly. The station has a sense of humour all its own. It keeps us humble. The Midnight Express and life at the edge. Around midnight, the station takes on a different aura. The lights seem brighter against the darkness, the insects buzz louder, and the few souls on the platform carry a special kind of weariness or determination. Some are workers returning from late shifts, longing for their beds. Others are travellers heading to distant cities, often unsure if they'll find a seat to rest. Occasionally, a group of night owls, young friends or college students, arrives, chatter echoing in the quiet. And of course, there are those who have nowhere else to go, hoping to spend the night on a station bench because it's safer than the streets. "Have you ever felt unsafe here at night?" Michael asked one evening as we watched the Midnight Express pull in. I considered the question. Not really, despite the darkness. Thirupaloor Station has its share of petty crimes. Pickpocketing, a stolen bag now and then, but overall, there's a sense of community watchfulness. People look out for one another, especially us regulars, and the station police do their rounds. I gestured to a uniformed constable who ambled by, nodding at me. We've known each other for years. He once caught a thief trying to snatch my money box. If there's trouble, we alert him or the station master. It's a small ecosystem. Everyone's part of the puzzle. Festivals of lights and realities of darkness. One Diwali night stands out in my memory, a perfect illustration of the station's dualities. Families arriving from various places converged here, the platform aglow with sparklers and the sound of distant firecrackers. Children squealed as they lit tiny diyas, lamps, under the not-so-approving gaze of station officials who worried about fire safety. In the midst of this celebration, a ragged man sat alone near the ticket counter, hunched over. He was new to the area, possibly homeless, and he watched the festivities with a haunted look. No one approached him. Everyone was busy with their own joys. After a while, I walked over, offered him a cup of chai and a small sweet. "Are you traveling somewhere, brother?" I asked gently. He shook his head, mumbling something about having lost his job and being cast out by family. His words were slurred, possibly from hunger or despair. I stayed with him for a few minutes, coaxing him to take sips of the hot tea. Meanwhile, the fireworks crackled in the background and children giggled with excitement. It was such a stark contrast, celebration and heartbreak occupying the same space, entirely different worlds colliding. After he finished the chai, a passenger who noticed our conversation quietly slipped me some money and whispered, "Give him some food. It's Diwali. No one should starve tonight." Michael, hearing this story, looked contemplative. That's exactly what I find so striking about India. Moments of profound disparity, but also these pockets of compassion. I nodded. Yes, it's the essence of this station, of this country. We see extremes side by side, and in that collision lies a chance for empathy. A dawn that feels like closure. In the early hours, around 4 or 5 a.m., the station transitions once more, this time from the long hush of night into the muted anticipation of a new day. Cleaners sweep away the debris of the previous day, discarded cups, ticket stubs, sweet wrappers. Vendors arrive sleepily, carting fresh supplies. Raja often chooses this moment to nap on the warm tracks, though I shoo him away if a train is due. The station master might be found wiping the sleep from his eyes, logging official entries in a big dusty register. And I'm usually boiling water for the first round of chai, readying myself for the next surge of travellers. "Does it ever get old, Anna?" Michael asked me once, watching me stoke the kerosene stove at dawn. Day in and day out, the same cycle. I smiled, shrugging. In one sense, it's the same. But in another, it's never the same, because every passenger brings a unique story, a different mood, a fresh possibility. That's why I can do this year after year. The station is alive with change, even within its routine. He nodded, jotting down a final note. I think I see it now. A microcosm, as you said. Day or night, tragedy or festival, it's all here. An ironic full circle. A few days after our talk about the station's 24-hour life, an ironic event occurred. Michael almost missed his own train back to Chennai for a brief meeting with his editor. He'd been so engrossed in interviewing a late-arriving passenger that he lost track of time. The whistle blew, and in a flash the train started to move. I laughed, seeing Michael sprint awkwardly with his backpack bouncing. I waved him on. "Run, Michael G., run!" He barely made it onto the moving train, turning back to give me a sheepish grin through the open doorway. That moment encapsulated everything about life at Thirupaloor: unpredictable, comical, and just a little bit dramatic. When he returned a couple of days later, he confessed with a grin, "Anna, I got a taste of station irony firsthand." I clapped him on the shoulder. "Now you're a true Thirupaloor traveller." Night's end and a fresh beginning. And so, day after day, night after night, Thirupaloor Station continues its dance, ever-changing, yet somehow comfortingly familiar. Celebrations can erupt at midnight, tragedies can unfold at noon. Irony runs rampant in every delay or misplaced farewell. Through it all, I remain rooted, serving chai, offering a smile, absorbing the stories that ripple across the platform. As I locked up my cart one night, gazing at the vacant tracks, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. Not everyone finds beauty in a place like this. An old station, chipped paint, battered benches, but I see it in the smallest gestures. A shared sweet during Diwali, a comforting word to a grieving passenger, a dog retrieving lost sandals, or an entire wedding party dancing to drum beats at 1 a.m. In that fleeting silence, I closed my eyes, imagining the next wave of travelers who would soon populate the station with their dreams, sorrows, and laughter. And I, Gopal, the old Chai Walla, would be here, kettle at the ready, to greet them. After all, in a world of constant arrivals and departures, we need a steadfast presence, a place or a person that remains, bearing witness. That is my role, and I accept it wholeheartedly. Episode 8. Wisdom Brewed with Chai. Philosophical Musings. Michael once told me that he was drawn to India not just for the stories of bustling markets and vibrant festivals, but for the undercurrent of philosophy that seems to flow through daily life. Even ordinary people here speak like poets sometimes, he joked. It's as though wisdom floats in the air and you just have to breathe it in. I laughed at that. We Indians are often philosophical, but it's a philosophy not learned solely from books or formal teachings. Much of it arises from the chaos of daily survival, from centuries of cultural tapestries, and from the little ironies we encounter every day. Over the years, the station has become my personal classroom, each encounter brewing a new layer of insight. As the days passed and Michael's notebook filled with interview notes, he started specifically asking me about my outlook on life, about fate, faith, resilience, laughter, loss, and human connection. "One more cup of tea, Anna," he'd say, switching on his recorder whenever we found a quiet moment. "Tell me more about your personal reflections." I was initially hesitant. In my mind, I was just a chai walla, not a formal philosopher or scholar. But Michael insisted that everyday philosophy can be the most profound kind. And so, over several conversations, sometimes in the early morning hush, sometimes late at night under flickering station lights, I shared my musings. Below, I've woven those conversations together, to the best of my memory, in this single narrative. Think of it as my life's wisdom, steeped in hot chai and stirred with a battered spoon. The kettle, the leaves, and the steam. "Why do you think tea is so central to Indian life?" Michael asked me one drowsy afternoon, as we sat on a bench watching a train depart for Madurai. I took my time, gazing at the kettle on my cart. Steam curled upward in delicate wisps. "I often liken chai to life," I began. "You start with water, plain, neutral, essential. You add tea leaves, bitter at first, like struggles or hardships. Then come the spices, ginger, cardamom, maybe masala. These are the joys, the flavors, the small delights that dance on your tongue. You let them simmer together, endure the heat. Finally, you add milk and sugar to soften it all, to bring sweetness and balance. That transformation, from raw ingredients to a comforting drink, reminds me of how experiences blend to form who we are." Michael scribbled furiously in his notepad. "So, would you say life is incomplete without the bitterness?" I nodded. "Yes. If you skip the tea leaves, just drinking sugared milk and water, you miss depth. No complexity, no real character. Hard times shape us. But equally, sugar and milk. Those are the love and kindness that keep the bitterness from overwhelming us. Life needs both hardship and comfort to become flavorful." He grinned. "I love that analogy." Fate versus free will. A platform debate. Not all my reflections are neat metaphors. Sometimes they emerge from direct encounters. One evening, Michael and I were sharing a conversation with the station master, Subramani, and a handful of regulars. The topic turned to fate and free will, whether we control our destinies or are mere pawns in a cosmic play. A young porter insisted that everything was predetermined, pointing to how he ended up in his line of work, despite wanting to be an engineer. An older fruit vendor argued that each choice we make, no matter how small, shapes our future. Michael asked me, Anna, what do you think? You've seen so many lives cross paths here. I leaned back against my cart, arms folded. I believe life is like a train with many stops. Fate might be the track layout, the route, but free will is the choices you make on each platform, when to board, when to get off, whether to take a seat or stand by the door, how you treat your fellow passengers. Some parts are fixed, but within that framework, we have countless decisions. Subramani nodded thoughtfully, adjusting his cap. Then how do you explain accidents or sudden tragedies? I paused, choosing my words. Those may be beyond our control, like a signal failure or a sudden storm on the tracks. But even then, how we respond is up to us. Do we panic? Do we help others? Do we learn from the experience? Michael jotted this down, remarking, so, in your view, destiny provides the general route, but we steer how the journey goes. Precisely, I said, and sometimes we even decide to switch trains, metaphorically speaking. The value of small acts. Over countless cups of chai, I've witnessed tiny gestures of compassion that bloom into grand outcomes. A simple act like sharing a biscuit with a stray dog or offering a seat to an elderly passenger can ripple outward in unexpected ways. One midday, Michael noticed me replace a broken clay cup for a passenger at no extra charge, an older man whose hands shook from arthritis, causing him to drop the first cup. The man thanked me profusely, tears in his eyes. You seem surprised at his reaction, Michael commented later. It was just a cup. I shrugged. It's never just a cup when someone is in distress or feels helpless. Kindness is most potent when it's small and spontaneous, a moment of dignity restored. That man likely felt ashamed for dropping his tea. My small gesture reminded him he's still worthy of being cared for. Michael nodded, as though filing that wisdom away. I see. You never know the weight a small action can carry. Forgiveness and second chances. The station is also a place where second chances often manifest. I told Michael about the time a mother and daughter reunited after years of estrangement right at my chai cart. The mother had travelled from a distant city, uncertain if the daughter would even meet her. But meet they did, tears flowing, words tumbling forth in a flurry of apologies and explanations. They bought 2 cups of chai, I recalled. They sat on that bench, I pointed near the pillar, talking for hours, eventually leaving together, hand in hand. Michael asked, what do you think changed in that moment? Forgiveness, I answered simply. Sometimes it's not about who was right or wrong, it's about acknowledging the hurt and choosing to move forward together rather than apart. He let out a soft sigh. You really see everything here. I chuckled. If you stand long enough in one place in India, all of life eventually passes by. This station is living proof. Humour as a shield and a sword. Anyone who frequents Thirupaloor Station knows me by my laughter. But humour, to me, isn't just a quirk. It's a survival skill. Michael wanted to understand how I could crack jokes even after heavy moments, like witnessing someone's sorrow or dealing with my own grief. Humour, my friend, I explained, is both a shield and a sword. As a shield, it protects me from being overwhelmed by life's tragedies. It allows me to keep functioning, to maintain hope. As a sword, it cuts through tension, bridging gaps between people. Sometimes a well-timed joke can unite strangers, diffuse anger, or give someone the courage to face another day. He gave me an appreciative look. I think many people in the world could use that perspective, especially in these turbulent times. I nodded. It's not about trivializing pain, it's about acknowledging it and deciding to keep smiling despite it. Reflections on love and loss. Inevitably, our conversations drifted back to Lakshmi. Michael admitted her story weighed on his heart, and he found my resilience inspiring. How do you keep your love for her alive without succumbing to grief all over again? He asked one cool evening. I gazed at the sky, where a faint crescent moon peeked through drifting clouds. Love is like a lamp, I said quietly. When the person who lit it is gone, you can choose to let the flame extinguish, or you can feed it with memories and gratitude, allowing it to burn on. I do the latter. Through laughter, service, and cherishing what she stood for, I keep that flame alive. It's not the same as having her here, but it's a comfort, like a guiding light. Michael observed me, pen poised but unmoving. Do you ever feel guilt for laughing, for feeling joy after she's gone? I answered honestly. Sometimes, at first, but I realized guilt doesn't honor her. It only buries me. She wanted me to laugh, so in a way, every burst of laughter is me respecting her wish. On aging and the passage of time. At 68, or so I believe, I never had a proper birth certificate, I'm often reminded of my mortality. Yet I don't dread aging. Rather, it feels like a blessing to still be here, serving chai and collecting stories. Michael once asked, "Do you worry about what happens when you're too old to run your cart, or when your time to depart this world arrives?" I gave him a wry smile. It's natural to wonder. My hands tremble more these days, and my knees ache if I stand too long. But as long as I can pour a cup of tea without spilling too much, I'll keep going. When I can't, perhaps someone else will take over. As for departing this world, well, that train will come eventually, whether I'm ready or not. I can't stop it, so I focus on making the most of the platform time I have left. Michael looked pensive. That's a healthy attitude, Anna. It's not unique to me, I replied. Many older folks in India accept mortality with a certain grace. We've seen enough births, deaths, festivals, funerals. Eventually, you realize life is cyclical. You come, you serve your part, you go. That's the cosmic timetable. Community and connection. One of my strongest convictions is that no one is an island. This station is my community, and each person in it, station master, vendor, porter, passenger, forms a web of relationships. Michael observed that in many parts of the world, isolation and loneliness plague people, even in big cities. "What's your secret to fostering community here?" he asked. I gave it some thought. "Vulnerability and empathy," I said. When people see I genuinely care, remembering their names, asking about their family, barriers melt. It's not rocket science. It's about consistently showing up with a smile and a listening ear. If someone is short on change, I don't harass them. If a traveler is upset, I offer them tea and a friendly word. Over time, trust grows. Michael smiled. "You make it sound so simple." I spread my hands. Because it is simple, in principle. The challenge is doing it every day, no matter your own mood or struggles. But that's what truly builds community, a steady effort to see and value each other. The philosophical interlude with the local priest. A memorable night saw me, Michael, and a local temple priest from a nearby Shiva temple sitting together on the platform, the trains momentarily absent. The priest, a scholarly man in his 50s, joined us after finishing his temple duties. In a soft voice, he spoke of the concept of nishkama karma, action without attachment to the fruits of that action. He turned to me and said, "You serve chai without expecting wealth or fame. You do it lovingly, with genuine service. That is a form of nishkama karma, Gopal." I blinked in surprise. "I never thought about it that way, Swamiji. I just do what I know best." He smiled warmly. "And that is why it holds spiritual value. The simplest tasks, done with sincerity and detachment, become offerings to the divine." Michael listened, enraptured, and later he confided, "So you're a man of spiritual significance, Anna." I guffawed. "Let's not go that far. I'm just trying to make an honest living. But if it helps people, and if that counts as a form of worship, then I'm honored." Contradictions and reconciliations. Sometimes Michael pressed me on the contradictions of India. Rapid modernization alongside deep-rooted tradition, extreme wealth beside stark poverty, fervent faith amid social conflicts. How do you reconcile these? He asked. I sighed. We're a land of contradictions, but they're woven into our cultural DNA. We rarely see them as irreconcilable. It's like a curry that combines sweet, sour, spicy, and bitter all at once. Each flavor might clash in theory, but together they create something uniquely Indian. Our spiritual traditions remind us that life can hold multiple truths at once. He scribbled notes, nodding. So acceptance is key. Acceptance, yes, and also action, where we can make a difference. We can't fix all injustices overnight, but we can lighten someone's burden moment by moment, like offering a free chai to someone who's down on their luck. It's not a grand solution, but it's a start. The philosophy of everyday rituals. Another evening, Michael noticed I perform a small ritual before lighting my stove. I sprinkle a few drops of water around the cart, murmuring a quick prayer. He asked me about it. In our culture, I explained, we often treat the tools of our livelihood with reverence, like deities in themselves, just as a farmer might pray to his plough or a student might pray to her books. I do the same for my chai cart. It's my lifeblood, and it helps me serve others. This small ritual reminds me not to take it for granted. He tilted his head thoughtfully. That's beautiful. It brings mindfulness to something that might otherwise be mundane. Yes, I agreed. And mindfulness is the root of many spiritual paths, being fully present, aware, and grateful for the moment you're in. A final question. Eventually, Michael's article was nearing its final stages. One late night, after the last passenger had collected their chai, Michael put down his pen and asked me a question that seemed to encompass everything we'd discussed. Anna, he said slowly, if you had to distill your life philosophy into a single statement, something that sums up everything you've learned, what would it be? I paused, genuinely taken aback by the enormity of the request. The station lights hummed, and Raja stirred at my feet. Finally, I spoke. If I had to sum it all up, I'd say, embrace the bitter, savor the sweet, and never stop serving others with a smile. Because in the end, life is a brew of contradictions, but our attitude can turn it into a cup worth drinking. Michael's eyes shimmered, and he slowly nodded. That's perfect, Anna. Absolutely perfect. A quiet walk home. That night, I walked back to my shack with a strange sense of calm. It felt as if I'd poured out not just tea, but my soul over the course of these interviews. My entire life's learning, steeped in heartbreak, resilience, everyday wonders, and quiet miracles, had been laid bare. I pushed aside the cloth that served as my door and stepped into my humble home. The kerosene lamp flickered, casting dancing shadows on the corrugated walls. Outside, a late monsoon breeze rustled the tin roof. I thought about everything we'd talked about. Fate, free will, bitterness and sweetness, laughter and tears. So many stories, each carrying a lesson. In the corner, the old trunk where I kept my few belongings caught my eye. On top sat a small framed photo of Lakshmi. I walked over, gently touched the edge of the frame, and murmured, "We've come a long way, haven't we?" I couldn't hear her voice, but I felt her approval in the warmth of my memories. Then, almost reflexively, I let out a soft laugh, because I sensed that's exactly what she'd want me to do. Tomorrow, the station would wake again at dawn. More travellers, more stories, more cups of tea, another chance to practice that humble brand of philosophy that's kept me afloat all these years. And I would be there, smiling, ready to serve. Little did I know that the days to come would bring a twist to my story, a final surprise that I never saw approaching, like a train arriving unannounced in the dead of night. But for now, I was content to let the lamp burn low, confident that whatever tomorrow held, I'd face it with open arms and that irrepressible laughter. Episode 9. The Surprising End. Revelations under the banyan tree. The day began like any other, with the faint light of dawn creeping over Thirupaloor Station and the rhythmic hissing of my battered kettle. A few early travellers wandered onto the platform, rubbing sleep from their eyes. I poured out steaming cups of ginger cardamom chai, greeting each person by name or with a friendly nod. Behind me, the ancient banyan tree towered, its branches swaying in a gentle morning breeze. Michael was supposed to arrive that day, but he'd been summoned to Chennai briefly for an editorial meeting. The station felt quieter without his inquisitive presence. No clicking camera, no scribbling pen, no softly probing questions. Yet I carried on, as I always do, letting life's tapestry unfold before my cart. Little did I know that before the day's end, I'd encounter a twist I could never have anticipated, one that would gather friends, strangers, and perhaps fate itself beneath the banyan's sprawling shade. Morning surprise, an official announcement. Around 9, when the first wave of daily commuters had already boarded their trains, a short announcement crackled over the station loudspeakers. "Attention, please. There will be a special gathering at Thirupaloor Station today at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. All staff and vendors are requested to be present near the banyan tree." A ripple of curiosity spread across the platform. The station master, Subramani, poked his head out of his office and shrugged at me. "I didn't schedule anything special. Must be a directive from higher authorities," he muttered. The fruit vendor Lakshmi, who just arrived with fresh bananas, asked, "Gopal Anna, do you know anything about this event?" I shook my head, equally puzzled. "No idea, sister. Maybe some railway officials visit." Narayan, the newspaper vendor, smirked. "Could be they're finally awarding you for your lifelong service, Anna." I laughed it off. Me? Unlikely. Let's see what the powers that be have in mind. But a seed of intrigue had been planted. An event at 4 o'clock under the banyan tree. That was unusual. A busy midday and rumours flying. As midday approached, the station swelled with travellers. A local politician hopped off a train with his entourage, instantly stirring the crowd with shouts and slogans. A group of college students, home for the holidays, ambled by, grinning when they spotted me. "Gopal Anna, we missed your chai," they said, tossing coins onto my cart. All the while, rumours about the afternoon gathering spread. Some said the railways were honouring a retiring staff member. Others speculated it might be a press event featuring a VIP from Chennai. A few joked that the banyan tree was being cut down to make way for station renovations, eliciting gasps of horror. I prayed that wasn't true. Couldn't imagine Thirupaloor Station without that ancient guardian. Michael was nowhere to be seen, still away on his quick trip to the city. I found myself wishing he'd return in time. If there was something significant happening at the station, surely he'd want to document it. The unexpected return of familiar faces. Just after noon, something even more surprising occurred. I spotted two women stepping onto the platform from the Trichy-bound train. At first, I didn't recognize them. They were dressed in smart salwar kameez outfits, each carrying modern travel bags. Then one waved excitedly, calling, "Appa." My heart flipped. It was my elder daughter, Vali, and my younger one, Radha, both beaming as they hurried toward me. I nearly dropped the clay cup I was holding. "What are you two doing here?" I stammered, rushing around my cart to embrace them. "You didn't tell me you were coming." Vali laughed. "Surprise, Appa. We managed to coordinate our leave. Radha from Bengaluru, me from Kerala. We wanted to visit you together." Radha added, "Also, we heard rumours that something big was happening at the station today. We thought we'd come see for ourselves, and see you, of course." Tears pricked my eyes. I glanced around at the onlookers, feeling slightly self-conscious, but my joy outweighed any embarrassment. "You couldn't have made me happier," I said, my voice quivering. They took turns fussing over me, asking if I was eating enough, why I hadn't replaced my threadbare shirt, and whether my knees still hurt in the morning. I answered their concerns in my usual cheerful manner, but deep down I was touched beyond words. Their presence alone was a blessing. The afternoon mystery deepens. By 2 o'clock, the station felt oddly charged with anticipation. People kept glancing at the large clock, awaiting 4 o'clock. Some of the vendors and staff, like Subramani, Lakshmi the fruit vendor, and Narayan, whispered theories about what was in store. My daughters took up positions near my cart, watching me brew chai for a steady stream of customers. They giggled when old friends stopped by to comment on how the girls have grown, or how they're even taller than Gopal Anna now. Radha helped wash cups, eager to relive her childhood days at the station. Vali offered a warm smile to each traveller, collecting coins and handing back change. Their presence turned my routine tasks into a celebration. At around 3:30, a wave of railway officials arrived, some in crisp uniforms, others wearing ID badges around their necks. They huddled near the station master's office, whispering among themselves. Subramani looked anxious, but also excited. Michael's breathless arrival. 3:45 came, and there was still no sign of Michael. I started to worry he'd missed the whole thing. But then, with a dramatic flourish, I saw him sprinting down the platform, backpack jostling and camera slung over his shoulder, much like the day he nearly missed his train. He paused, hands on his knees, gasping for breath. "Anna, I got delayed. Train late." I laughed, offering him a cup of water. "Calm down, Michael G. You're here just in time. We're about to find out what this mystery event is." Catching his breath, he glanced around at the gathered officials, the throng of curious onlookers, and my daughters. His eyes widened. "Your family's here. Did you know about this?" I shook my head. "They showed up as a surprise. I suspect something bigger is at play." The gathering under the banyan tree. At exactly 4 o'clock, a long whistle signaled from the public address system. The railway officials formed a small procession, led by a tall, dignified woman in a neatly pressed sari, clearly someone of rank. The crowd began migrating toward the banyan tree, forming a semicircle beneath its wide canopy. Subramani stood near the trunk, looking both nervous and proud. He cleared his throat and spoke into a small microphone that the officials had set up. "Friends, staff, and respected passengers of Thirupaloor Station," he began, voice echoing in the hush. "We have a special announcement today, one that celebrates the heart and soul of this station." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some folks glanced at me, while my daughters slipped closer, each holding one of my arms. Michael stood behind me, notebook ready, camera lens glinting. Raja, the station dog, trotted up, tail wagging, as if sensing the moment. The tall woman in the sari stepped forward. "My name is Divya Ramesh, Divisional Railway Manager for this region," she said calmly. "I've been reading some fascinating articles in the press about Thirupaloor Station, particularly about a certain chai vendor whose story has captured hearts far beyond our state or even our country." She paused, scanning the crowd with a hint of a smile. Michael Hastings, the Australian journalist, wrote a detailed piece about the Laughing Chai Walla. It has reached thousands of readers globally, some in high places. My pulse quickened. Michael flashed me an excited grin, but I felt a surge of shyness. "They're talking about me." The revelation of a lifetime. Divya continued, "This station, once overlooked, has become a symbol of community spirit and resilience, and at the center of it is you, Gopal Anna." She turned to me, her words ringing clear. "You've spent a lifetime brewing chai and spreading warmth, not just in cups, but in hearts." My daughters tightened their grip on my arms, and I heard them sniffle. I stood frozen, unsure how to respond. Applause broke out among the crowd, vendors, travellers, porters, and staff clapping vigorously. Michael snapped photos, capturing my stunned expression. Divya raised a hand for silence. In recognition of your decades of service, though not officially on railway payroll, you've been an unwavering presence here. We, the Railway Board, have a special announcement. Today, we officially name this banyan tree and the adjoining platform area in your honour. Henceforth, it shall be known as Gopal Anna's Corner. Gasps and cheers echoed. My mouth fell open. I felt tears welling, my throat too tight for words. A part of the station, named after me? Divya gestured to two railway workers who pulled aside a small cloth draping a newly installed plaque. Sure enough, it read, Gopal Anna's Corner. In honor of Gopal, the Chai Walla, whose spirit, laughter, and kindness have uplifted Thirupaloor Station for generations. The crowd erupted into more applause, some cheers, and a few whistles. A wave of emotion surged through me, pride, disbelief, and overwhelming gratitude. My daughters cried openly, hugging me from either side. Even Subramani dabbed his eyes with a handkerchief, trying to maintain composure. A speech from the heart. Someone thrust a microphone into my hand. My entire body trembled. I glanced around, at the banyan tree that had sheltered me, at the station staff who had become family, at the travellers who paused to witness this moment of unity. Raja wagged his tail at my feet. Michael stood off to the side, camera pointed at me, but eyes warm with encouragement. I took a shaky breath. I don't know what to say. Thank you. To everyone. This station has been my home, my life, my everything. I never imagined such an honor. My gaze swept across the crowd, tears blurring my vision. I'm just a chai seller. All I ever did was try to make each person's day a little brighter, with a smile, a conversation, or a hot cup of tea. I don't feel I deserve such a big gesture. Divya stepped forward, her voice soft. Your humility is precisely why you deserve it, Gopal Anna. The applause grew louder. I could see Narayan, the newspaper vendor, grinning ear to ear. Lakshmi, the fruit seller, wiped her tears with the end of her sari. The policeman who once saved my money box raised a cheering fist. So many faces, all shining with shared pride. I cleared my throat, determined to speak a bit more coherently. If I've learned one thing in life, it's that kindness and laughter can transcend any barrier, be it language, class, or sorrow. Thank you for letting me be part of your journeys, and thank you for being part of mine. I accept this honor on behalf of everyone who makes Thirupaloor Station feel like home. My voice cracked on the last word, and the crowd erupted again. This time I let the tears flow freely, my heart too full to worry about appearances. The grand unveiling and festive atmosphere. As the applause subsided, Divya guided me and my daughters to the plaque. She handed me a small garland of fresh marigolds, which I laid around the sign that read, Gopal Anna's Corner. A railway photographer snapped pictures, capturing the moment for official records. Then, in true Thirupaloor style, the atmosphere shifted from reverent to celebratory. Someone began clapping in rhythm. Lakshmi's teenage son brought out a small drum, tapping out a lively beat. Passengers waiting for the next train joined in the clapping. Soon the entire corner buzzed with joy, a spontaneous celebration, reminiscent of the festival gatherings we'd so often seen. My daughters laughed, tears drying, as they swung my arms in a playful dance. Even Raja seemed excited, barking in sync with the drum. Michael darted around with his camera, capturing every angle. Overwhelmed by gratitude, I found myself laughing in that loud, unguarded way everyone associates with me. Michael's revelation. At the height of the merriment, Michael waved me over, pulling me aside for a moment of quiet amid the swirling crowd. His eyes shone. Anna, he said, voice trembling with excitement, this is incredible. The best kind of storybook ending. I grinned, breathless from the surge of emotion. I never expected anything like this. He patted my shoulder. You deserve every bit of it. My editor told me that after I published your story, it struck a chord with readers worldwide. Donations poured in for local charities. People wrote letters praising your outlook on life, and clearly it also reached the railway authorities. I had no idea they'd do something so grand, though. I stared at him, a wave of realization washing over me. Michael G., if not for your article, none of this would have happened. He smiled gently. Perhaps, but I only shone a spotlight. The goodness was already there. Before I could respond, my daughters beckoned us to join the ongoing celebration. A mysterious letter and an unexpected gift. As the impromptu festivities continued, Divya approached me again, handing me an envelope. This arrived at the railway divisional office, she explained, addressed to the Chai Walla of Thirupaloor Station. It came with a note referencing Michael Hastings' article. Curious, I tore it open. Inside was a handwritten letter in English and a cashier's cheque. I frowned, reading slowly. The letter was from an elderly couple in Melbourne, Australia, a couple I'd never met. They wrote, "Dear Gopal, we read your story in the paper and felt compelled to help. Decades ago, our son travelled through India but tragically passed away in an accident. We still remember the kindness he encountered from ordinary people like you. To honour his memory, we want to support someone who embodies that same kindness. Please accept this cheque as a token of our gratitude. Use it to continue your good work in whichever way you see fit, helping the needy, improving your station, or simply making life easier for yourself. We believe in paying love forward, and we're convinced you will do the same. Yours in gratitude, Margaret and Henry Thompson." The cheque was for a substantial amount, far more than I'd ever seen in one place. My head spun. I handed the letter to Michael, my hands shaking. He read it aloud for the crowd to hear. Gasps and murmurs rose from those who understood English. Others asked for a translation, which Michael provided in Tamil. Tears pricked my eyes again. Why me? The generosity was staggering, and it felt too big to bear alone. A decision under the banyan tree. The crowd, newly hushed, waited for my reaction. I folded the letter, pressing it to my heart. I can't keep this just for myself, I said, voice quavering. What we do here at Thirupaloor is a collective effort. The station is a family, so I will donate a portion of this to improve our station's facilities, maybe a better waiting area, or fans and benches for the comfort of travellers. Cheering erupted. Subramani beamed, clasping his hands together as if in prayerful thanks. I paused, glancing down at Raja. Also, some of it will go to local animal care. Stray dogs like Raja deserve proper food and medical attention. A wave of affectionate laughter echoed. Then I looked at my daughters, whose eyes glistened with pride. And a little bit will help me fix our leaky roof at home, so when my daughters visit, they don't have to duck under buckets. At that, everyone burst into good-natured laughter. My daughters nodded, tears replaced by smiles of relief. Michael captured every moment, my trembling hands clutching the cheque, the crowd's jubilant reaction, the crestfallen station dog who just realized he'd be off the street dog diet. The reunion of hearts. In the aftermath, the station turned into a swirl of congratulatory handshakes, pats on the back, and tearful hugs. Even the midday travellers who'd arrived moments earlier joined the crowd, picking up bits of the story from neighbours and station staff. At one point, I stood near the banyan tree, half dazed by the flurry of events. My daughters stood on either side, their arms around me. Michael approached, lowering his camera. "Anna, how do you feel?" I laughed, a soft, breathless laugh, still in disbelief. "I feel unworthy, but also incredibly grateful. It's like the universe decided to be generous all at once." He nodded. "Sometimes we gather karma over many years, and it comes back when we least expect it." I gazed at the plaque, Gopal Anna's corner, and then at the letter in my hand. I've always believed in the power of small acts. Maybe this is proof that those acts echo beyond what we can imagine. Michael patted my shoulder. You once told me that life is a blend of bitterness and sweetness, and it's our attitude that makes it worth drinking. Today, I think we've tasted the sweetness in abundance. I couldn't agree more. Quiet reflections in the evening glow. By early evening, the official ceremony ended and the crowd dissipated. The station returned to its usual rhythm, trains arriving and departing, vendors calling out, porters hefting luggage. But a lingering warmth remained in the air, as if the day's events had infused the station with renewed spirit. My daughters helped me roll my cart to its usual spot under the newly christened Gopal Anna's Corner. Their eyes danced with excitement at the thought of spending a few days together with me. Michael stuck around, interviewing a few travellers for final reactions, and then joined us. We brewed one last kettle of chai for ourselves, a private toast to the station that had somehow become the epicenter of a whirlwind day. Standing under the banyan tree, the four of us raised our cups, me, my daughters, and Michael. Raja dozed nearby, snoring gently. To Thirupaloor Station, Michael said, lifting his cup. To community and kindness, Vali added. To family, Radha murmured, leaning her head on my shoulder. To all the small acts that lead to big miracles, I said softly, my heart full. We clinked our cups together, the chai steam rising in the golden hue of the setting sun. Epilogue. A lasting legacy. In the weeks that followed, Michael finalized his article series, sending the story of Thirupaloor Station and its Laughing Chai Walla across international platforms. The response was overwhelming. Letters poured in, offers of donation for the station's upkeep, and even a few travellers who deliberately booked tickets just to see the famed Gopal Anna's Corner. True to my promise, a portion of the funds went to station improvements, new benches, a fresh coat of paint for the waiting room, and additional lights for better nighttime safety. Another share went to a local animal shelter, which began vaccinating and feeding stray dogs around the station, Raja included. The remainder helped me fix my leaky roof, a modest comfort I'd never thought I'd afford. The plaque under the banyan tree stood as a daily reminder of that extraordinary afternoon. Travellers paused to read it, often smiling or asking me to pose for pictures. My daughters returned to their lives, but they called more frequently. They seemed relieved that I was not only in good spirits, but also recognized in a way they'd never imagined. Michael stayed in Thirupaloor a bit longer, documenting the station's transformations, then eventually embarked on further travels across India. We promised to keep in touch. I'll be back, he said, maybe for the next surprise. I laughed. Knowing this station, there'll always be another story brewing. A final note from me, Gopal. Now, when I greet the morning trains, I do so with the same smile, the same laughter that's been my signature for decades. But there's a new warmth in my chest, a confirmation that the small, consistent acts of kindness and humor can ripple out in unimaginable ways. I remain, in essence, the same chai walla, still measuring out tea leaves, boiling water, adding sugar or jaggery, offering a friendly conversation. My life is rooted in the simple joys of service. But each time I glance at that plaque reading Gopal Anna's Corner, or remember the letter from the Thompsons in Australia, I'm reminded that no act of love goes unnoticed by the universe. Under the sprawling banyan tree, its ancient roots entwined with the station floor, I've found that life's greatest surprises often spring from the seeds we plant unknowingly. A smile here, a helping hand there, a laugh shared with a weary traveller. These seeds blossom in their own time, sometimes when we least expect. And so, my story continues. An old man selling chai at all hours, at a station no longer quite so forgotten. The trains come and go, carrying countless stories and souls. I remain a witness, a friend, a keeper of small miracles. And if you ever pass through Thirupaloor, look for the corner named after me. I'll be there, kettle in hand, laughter at the ready, grateful for every twist of fate that brought me here.